So Shawn, this is kind of cool for me because I was a huge fan of bodybuilding in the '90s, and you're
born in the '90s.
Anytime you see a list of top uncrowned, they'll say uncrowned Olympias, like the best uncrowned Olympias of all time, you're up there. It's always you, Flex, Kevin, Lavrone. Who else? Gaspari, probably from the 80s. But you're definitely one of the guys that's up there.
Yeah.
And the thing I found unique about you during that decade, because that was the decade that really the mass monsters were born, I would say. I mean, it's always been about size, right?
I might have been the first one to use the term mass monster.
Probably.
Go ahead, I'm listening.
Probably. Yeah. But that's really when it was born. Dorian comes out and just everybody's like, this guy's insane. You had these 300-pound bodybuilders that were coming out where didn't exist before. Mm-hmm. And here you were, this classic, symmetry and definition and just peak condition kind of bodybuilder.
Right.
So you were competing in an era where, I mean, it was interesting. It was an interesting era.
The land of the giants.
Yeah.
Jurassic Park.
Yeah, and I was a very huge fan of yours because of that. And you were quite controversial and all that stuff back then. But let's start in the beginning. Like, how did it all get started?
My mom and dad hooked up. And
I was the youngest.
I'm the youngest of 8. I am the youngest of 8. And after they got that right, they stopped having kids. But I was playing football way back in the dark ages in high school, and from 8 to 18, got hurt my senior year. Had to watch my playoff game with my on the crutches. It was a knee sprain. It wasn't a tear or anything like that. But watching my passion evaporate as we lost that game, I was at a quagmire. Had to decide whether I was going to go football or bodybuilding. I'd already competed once or twice. And you
were young as a competitor. You won quite early.
Started at 17. My first show was 5 months in, and I got second place a week later, and I won. And then we started, playing football. And what
position you play? Football.
I was everything.
Everything.
I returned punts, returned kicks. I was the left halfback. I was the starting tailback.
So you're fast as fuck.
Yeah, I did all right. I think I was probably more shifty. However, I still hold the high school record at my school. Had the longest run from scrimmage, 98 yards. The record was 96 yards. That's probably what I'm most proud about. Here I am, like 32 years out of high school, and the freaking record is still there.
Oh, that's nice.
And I'm still the leading all-time rusher at that school. So either we got a lot of slow white guys at my school, or I was playing in a crappy league. But, here I am. I'm still in the Hall of Fame in high school. But it launched me into this rehab mode because I watched us lose this game we should have won. I thought I'd be able to come back the next playoff game and continue. But I'm glad I didn't, because it was one of those moments in time that I had to make this decision. Either I'm going to get back on my feet and play in the All-Star game to go to college football, or compete and go for the Teenage National Championships. I chose to compete and go for the Teenage National Championships. On the way, I met 1982 Mr. Olympia, Chris Dickerson. I happened to go to Gold's Gym to train one time, and he was there, and he started kind of favoring me. I didn't know he was gay at the time, but he was he was on the cover of Flex magazine.
He's got good taste.
He was 43 years old, the oldest Mr. Olympia. He made bikinis for the bodybuilders, and here I was looking at him eye to eye, and thought, he's the best in the world. Maybe there's some possibilities here. I mean, I want to be him. And he introduced me to a photographer, John Balick, who's one of the more famous photographers, and he set me up with a photo shoot. And it wasn't until I saw the pictures at 18 years old, I got second in that Teenage Nationals, that I started to believe, by comparing myself to Chris Dickerson, that this is something that I could probably do. And of course, the following year, I won the Teenage National Championships at 19 years old, junior world champion in Australia at 20. And then at 21, I won the American National Championships, which is where I got my pro card 3 years out of high school. And so clearly I made the right decision in terms of choosing bodybuilding. But my role models coming up, I was looking at Chris Dickerson, Muhammad Makaway, Frank Zane, Samir Banu. I think my era, I came 5 years after where I would have probably been able to fit in nicely. Right. You remember Franco Columbo won the Olympia in 81, Chris Dickerson in 82, Samir Banu in 83, and that's when I started bodybuilding. They're all about 5'6", 5'5", 5'1". And, Franco's tiny. And then here comes Lee Haney, the year I graduate in 84, at 5'10", he wins the Mr. Olympia. And he's winning for the next 8 years. And I caught the tail end of that run in 1988. I got a sniff in the Mr. Olympia here in Los Angeles, and I got 13th. And then I came back in 1990 and I got third. And in 91, I slipped down to fifth place. That was the same year I won the Arnold Classic. So I had a lot of things on my plate and a lot of excuses why I came from third place to fifth place. But I was there for the Lee Haney retirement party. And then right on the heels of Lee Haney at that time was Dorian Yates in 91 getting second place. And he would go on to win the next 6 years. And then, of course, when he retired due to injury in 97, Ronnie Coleman at 5'10", 280 pounds, he goes on a tear of 8 years. So coming behind those three guys, winning the Olympia 22 years in a row, and my 14-year career smashed in between there, I never stood a chance. I mean, once they saw the size, the possibilities of how big these guys could get, a small guy like myself, the lines, the proportion, the classic style, it kind of got put to the side. And we threw everything we could. We threw Flex Wheeler and Kevin Lavrone and Nasser Russell. We threw everybody at these three guys, and none of us could take them out. Although there were some chinks in the armor. When you say controversial, I became controversial because I said, how can anybody win a contest if you have the same judges every year?
Yeah.
This is a sport of subjective opinion, but we have the same judges. You're going to wind up with the same champions.
Yeah, I remember, maybe it was an article in, I don't remember what magazine it was, Iron Man or something, where they interviewed you, where it was the year that, because Dorian comes out, he gets second to Lee, then he comes back and he's like massive. He did something different. Who knows what it was. Came back, was a freak. Nobody, deservedly crushed his competition. But then I don't remember what year it was. Maybe it was the following year or 2 years.
Tore his bicep.
'94. I remember it well.
Yeah, he tore his bicep, and
I was second.
He's getting perfect scores on symmetry, which you can't with the And you voiced it.
Absolutely. What I did in that year, because I was second place, was I didn't have to badmouth him. All I had to do was point out the things that was wrong with him. He had a bloated stomach. His coloring, his tan, it was just pouring down like chocolate off of his white skin. The bicep tear was glaringly noticeable, and you could see that he was trying to hide it and mask it. And yet, he's an average poser, but he wasn't a great poser. He wasn't along the lines of a Vince Taylor or myself or some of the other guys that came before him. But because he had the 92 and 93 Olympia, and because he stood head and shoulders above the rest, and he was the standard at 5'10", 260, a good big guy will beat a great small guy. And it just continued that way all the way through the Ronnie Coleman era. And I think along the way, it disenfranchised a lot of bodybuilders that fell in love with the sport because of its artistry. The artistry was lost in the 90s. I came up behind, again, masterful physiques like Muhammad Makaway that stood second place to Lee Haney, Chris Dickerson and Samir Labrada. These guys were physique artists. It's what I fell in love with because, they were big, but that wasn't the only thing they were. And when we got to that 94 Olympia and you can justify that Dorian was bigger, therefore he wins, well, then it gave the justification for the standard for the rest of those years in the 90s that led to the arrival of Ronnie Coleman. And once Ronnie Coleman leapfrogged over everyone in 1998, there was no turning back the hands of time because the judges were just overwhelmed with the size.
Yeah, and to be fair, Coleman, he presented, I still think he's the greatest of all time with the size, and not all of his Olympia wins, but size and conditioning and balance, just an absolute
he took it to another
monster. But during the 90s, again, to be fair, there's definitely some issues with Dorian, although I'm a huge fan of his. I think he had the way he trained, he was just a warrior and all that stuff, and of course he injured himself quite a bit of times. But you had probably, in my opinion, and maybe I'm biased because that was the decade that I followed, but in my opinion, the most competitive, forget first place, forget the Olympia, Mr. Olympia, second to fifth, most competitive I'd ever seen, probably till this day, of bodybuilders. Between you, Lavrone, Flex, Nasser,
Cormier's in there.
Cormier, Vince guys. Taylor was still crushed. These are all guys that are
worthy of an Olympia title.
Absolutely, and it doesn't seem like that anymore. What was that like competing? Who was your biggest nemesis, I would guess?
Well, the depth of the field is what validates my career. Because like you said, any of those guys could have won the Olympia and there could have been an argument. Labrada getting second to Haney in 1989 in Rimini, there was an argument for him. He's a little thinner on the muscular side, but again, for me, I fell in love with it because of the beauty.
Symmetry.
When I looked at Bob Paris, who never won the Olympia, in 1983, he was the American national champion and he was the universe champion, and every girl wanted to sleep with him. And he wasn't offensive muscularity-wise. He had the look, the it factor. That it factor just diminished in the mid-90s. Dorian Yates, as great as he was, in off-season, there wasn't a whole lot to look at. I mean, you could tell a great bodybuilder when they're on season or off season. I mean, Flex Wheeler and Kevin Lavrone, you see these guys off season, you want to look like that. Dorian at 300 plus pounds, not so much. Only so many people could aspire to look this way and do the things to get that look, which made me more popular in places like Italy and Japan and Mexico, where clearly they could aspire to be, you know, something like me. I'm a shorter bodybuilder, I'm more proportionate, and it was more about conditioning and detail and balance. Now, that's not taking anything away from Dorian, but what I will take away from it is that the beauty of bodybuilding was lost when the 90s expired, because once Ronnie Coleman pushed the envelope, of course, Jay Cutler came behind him, you started finding athletes that just weren't willing to go swim in the deep end and do the things necessary to look that way.
Let's talk about some of those things. Are we talking about growth hormone? Are we talking about insulin?
Clearly.
What are the things?
Absolutely, man. The evolution of the chemistry in the sport of bodybuilding was happening at the same time in baseball and in football. Of course, even in wrestling, the wrestlers from the WWE or the WWF, whichever one you want to call it, these guys started getting smaller and softer. I mean, look at Brock Lesnar today. I mean, once the crackdown started happening, they were a shell of themselves. But it was the wild, wild west towards the late 90s, because people are combining these chemicals, which are changing the chemistry of the core of what bodybuilding actually is. And I don't want to say that the natural side of bodybuilding was taken out of the sport, but I think the science just got too carried away. Look, a little bit's good.
Right.
A lot is just not the same. Look, give me a couple of beers and I'm laughing with you. Give me 6 and I'm throwing up or I'm passed out. Some of these guys don't know their limitations, and a lot of them aren't with us as a result of their ignorance to where the speed limit is. But when you show up bloated and you show up with bitch tits, which is gynomastia, and you torn muscles, the judges were ignorant to the idea that we should take points away, knock them down, so that, you know what, if they did that to Dorian would come back the next year a better bodybuilder. He wouldn't keep pushing the envelope. Phil Heath had this this stomach issue last year and this year. Well, he came back this year with the same stomach issue, and they took the title off of him.
Right.
They could have easily taken the title off of Dorian 1 or 2 times and off of Ronnie 1 or 2 times, which would have changed what the guys are doing, and brought maybe back some of the conservatism in terms of what you can do chemically,
or how much that you're actually. So let's stay on topic with that, because I always find it fascinating to talk to guys like you. When was it that you made that decision that I'm going to get into anabolics? How old were you, and how hard of a decision was that, or was it like a no-brainer? I'm fucking doing this.
Yeah, I was 21. I was coming off of a loss to Eddie Robinson at the Junior Nationals.
So you're already competing natural. You're competing.
Yeah, I mean, I won everything. I won the Teenage Nationals. I won the Teenage California, Teenage LA, Teenage Orange County, the Junior World Championships over in Australia, and then here I was winning the California at 21, and I had the Nationals coming up 6 months later out in Atlantic City, New Jersey. So now I got to figure out what I got to do to kind of harden up and tighten up. I didn't want to speed up because I was always in it for the longevity factor. And my career shows that. I mean, even today, I'm retired 17 years. I'm 218 pounds. I competed at 212. The muscles distributed differently because I'm carrying a lot more body fat, but I never got sucked into, let me take this to get big. I was training 2 and 4 hours a day, twice a day, tearing my body down. I was using in order to maintain the quality of muscle I had and also to harden it up. I never used anabolics to get big. And for the record, I failed the first and ever steroid test at the Arnold Classic back in 1990.
That's right.
So I mean, I'm the poster boy. I'm Ben Johnson of bodybuilding.
Of all people, too. You know.
Yeah, but life serves its lessons when the time is right, and I'm glad it happened early enough. But the lesson for me was I was going to get tested again 6 months later, and I catapulted myself to 3rd place in the Olympia. The lesson for the federation was that they keep on testing these bodybuilders, they're not going to have anybody to test.
Right.
Because it was so rampant, and it's still rampant, that you had to kind of just accept the bodybuilders are grown men, they're going to do what they want to do.
Right.
It's almost like alcohol. Look, you can't, they tried to abolish alcohol, right? But eventually as an adult, you make those decisions. And I'm of the opinion that, look, when I go pay this kind of money to watch these athletes perform, whether it's football, baseball, or bodybuilding, I don't care what they take. Hell, they're doing it for the money and the fame anyways. I mean, this quarterback's getting $100 million contracts. Hell, if he's taking something so he can get up off the field, he's absorbing those blows, he's got something that he could take to recover faster, play stronger. That's what I want to see. And that's maybe coming from a professional athlete who made a living off of it. I don't want to hear the guy sitting there smoking cigarettes, drinking beers, going, he's on steroids. No wonder he can run this fast and take those hits. Yeah, but I mean, you have to understand that even with Lance Armstrong,
Right.
He was doing what he needed to do to win.
Yep.
And after he got caught and he admitted all that shit, literally all those guys were doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Carl Lewis and Ben Johnson. While Carl Lewis hadn't tested dirty and Ben Johnson was caught, we later found out that Carl Lewis was dirty all the time.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And all that shit came out after the fact. And at the end of the day, if everybody's dirty, then who's cheating?
Right.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir with that one. That's for sure.
So I don't want to say I got caught. I was ignorant to the idea of how long they stay in my system. I was using, I got off for 3 months, and I tested positive.
What'd you test positive for? Was this
Widstrel, the same thing that Ben Johnson
Yeah, that
was
stays in your
using.
system for like a year.
No, well, it's water-based. It's a fast-acting drug, and it should be in and out of your system for 3 months, after 3 months. And, of course, wherever it's deposited, it depends on how much body fat you had. I found out a little bit more about it later. But I was never into the pharmacology side of it. I used the things that were going to make me hard, dry, and separated. I didn't use things that were going to make me big. I never didn't use growth hormone, never even thought about using insulin. And all that stuff was kind of coming in the 90s. And my look didn't change too much. And I was criticized because I didn't evolve with these guys playing the mass game.
Is that why you see? Is that why you saw the growth of the gut of the big belly? Because like you always maintained a very tight midsection. Your midsection was always very flat. But now it was in the 90s you started seeing this happening, and you see it a lot now where if a bodybuilder's relaxed on stage, pregnant, like big belly. Was that from the insulin and growth hormone?
Absolutely. They miss me now, man. I'm telling you. They were complaining that I wasn't making these dramatic changes from year to year. But part of it was because I wasn't doing the stuff the other guys were doing.
Right.
And as they were doing it, they weren't getting better. With the exception of Lee Haney in 1991 in his last and final eighth victory, none of those Mr. Olympia champions ever got better towards the end of their career. Ronnie fell apart. Dorian fell apart. Phil Heath just showed us he's fallen apart. And Dexter Jackson, I mean, he's the only one that fought Father Time, but he's not the same bodybuilder he once was. So you don't get better with age in terms of use. You start to beat your body up and you start to tear it apart and wear it down. Whereas I started kind of tapering off towards the end, which didn't allow for these dramatic gains. You didn't see the dramatic improvement. So the judges had a reason to maybe take me from, 4th place to 5th place and kind of move me around. And you had these new guys coming in. Like Flex Wheeler was not the same bodybuilder in 2000 that he was in 1993. Everyone arguably says that's the best physique we ever saw in 1993.
Yep, that was at the Arnold Classic win.
Young, raw, 216 pounds. A 240-pound bodybuilder that Flex evolved into was not the same. And so when you start putting in all these things, the body changes its chemistry, and there's areas that you just can't unring. So Dorian's bloated stomach, Ronnie's bloated stomach, Lou Ferrigno, when he made the comeback, showed up with a bloated stomach.
300 pounds he was on stage.
Well, when you start doing the things that you think you have to do to be big, it changes for me, it changes why we do it. Right. I was always an artist in the studio, sculpting, shaping, defining, and hoping that my condition would put me up against the best in the world. And sometimes I beat a lot of guys just because I was in shape.
It's funny. We had Stan Efferding on the show, and he said something that was I thought was so true. He's like, you need to take more to gain. You need to take much less to maintain. And when you look at some of the bodybuilders that push the size, many of them are not doing so well anymore.
Not only that, but they're dead.
Yeah.
Art Atwood, Matt Duvall, Don Youngblood, Nasser El Somebody. I mean, the list is long.
Matarazzo.
These are names that just jump at me. Mike Matarazzo. They all were kind of playing. Mohammed Ben Aziza, who was in the 92 Olympia. He was the little 5'1" guy from Algeria that beat Dorian Yates. He's the only guy to beat Dorian Yates. In 1990 at the Night of Champions, he beat Dorian, and then in 91, Dorian came in second at the Olympia, and the rest is history. But the good little guys had a very good bite at the apple. I mean, Labrada's got 2 second Olympia runner-ups, or first runner-ups. Muhammad McAway has 2. I've got 2. Of course, Frank Zane won 3 Mr. Olympia titles, and Samir actually won the 1983 along with Dickerson. So there were small bodybuilders that were fully capable of winning. But when the judges got it in their head that bigger is better, now you see these big guys win and you can pick them apart. Those other guys you couldn't really pick apart because they look like works of art and they moved like artists. Now you got these big lumbering bodybuilders that don't give a shit about posing, certainly don't care about relaxing on stage, but the sum total of all that use goes right to the stomach. And that's really where the beauty of bodybuilding starts, with a nice six-pack, the deltoids. They say the bodybuilding shows are one from the back. Most of those big guys have great backs. They turn around, they got these big fat stomachs. It's just not a good look.
Yeah, in fact, aesthetics, when scientists study aesthetics in particular, they find constants across all cultures. And one of the constants is with women, it's the hip to waist ratio. With men, it's the waist to shoulder ratio.
Sure.
And bodybuilding, originally when it first started, as you're aware, you had to perform things on stage, do lifts, and eventually it turned into purely about aesthetics. But it was based on this, foundation of aesthetics, which is, you look like you're healthy, fit, strong, and that you can procreate. Not necessarily this massive, and I think now what you're seeing now with the IFBB, they developed all these, or they've created all these subcategories, I think, to address that.
Yeah,
right?
but do you think it helped it, or do you think it just made it worse? I feel like it's just promoted the
extreme in
the
bodybuilding.
extreme in bodybuilding, and then now if you don't want that extreme, you go to classic.
Well,
What's your thoughts on
it does give you choices. Now listen, the fat bloated guts gave birth to the men's physique. And then when we got bored with the guy standing there in board shorts, it gave birth to the classic physique, because everyone's longing for the old school. Classic physique is just basically old school bodybuilding.
Exactly what it looks like.
And I could tell you, not only is it much more inclusive for the athlete that's in high school coming out going, hey, I could look like that, but it's more desirable for the females to want to watch, because not only with the classic physiques coming back, they also have this element of presentation that's lost, that's been gone for I don't know how long. Once you've seen Dorian and Ronnie and these big guys lumber around the stage, you long to see somebody like a Lavrone that's an artist go up there and actually do a routine that's kind of choreographed. So the classic is kind of bringing that back. And now we have something to entertain us, and something that we can say is like a work of art, or it's a performance. Those are the guys that are going to wind up getting the most work. And because we no longer are going to be sitting there wanting to clap and cheer for a guy with a big stomach who's walking around trying to raise the roof, you're going to see guys that realize, you know what, I'm not going to try to take all that crap and look that way. I'm going to do it the classic. I think classic physique is where this sport's going to be headed.
Oh, wow.
In the next 5 years.
So you think it's going to go over bodybuilding?
Yeah, because you know what? Not only are there more concerns about people dying, mind you, Dallas McCarver died only a year ago.
Yeah. Right.
25, 26 years old. And he would have been a future Mr. Olympia in 3 years, because I believe in 3 years, Phil Heath would have been gone. Sean Roden would probably be gone. Kai Green would be gone. All these guys are going to be gone due to age. And then you would have had this 29-year-old behemoth coming out of Tennessee that nobody would have been able to stand next to, but he couldn't hold himself back. He wanted it now. And I think when that happens, all the other bodybuilders are starting to take note. Shit, I don't want to be the next Dallas McCarver. And you got bodybuilders dropping down into classic because they realize I don't have to eat as much. I don't have to lift as heavy. I might have a longer career. I'm not going to, have to do they look at Ronnie Coleman and go like, do I want to is that my future? Look, if you're a boxer and you looked at Muhammad Ali, you're like, is that my future?
Right.
So it's enough to scare you away when these guys are dropping dead, to the point that, okay, if I'm not going to be this 300-pound guy, then what's my choices? Well, maybe I can slim up and go back to shape and get in health. Because I think being lighter and more fit is probably going to be a longer career, more opportunities.
I also think it's just more mainstream.
That's an interesting theory, because it's sometimes I agree with that and sometimes I disagree, because sometimes I think fucking people are weird, dude. We just want to see the freakish, craziest fucking thing.
The fans.
Yes.
The fans do. You're absolutely right. But who's marketing and who's selling what? Because when's the last time we've seen a freaky bodybuilder on the cover of Muscle and Fitness, for example? I mean, that's one of the mainstream lone surviving magazines, and instead they put somebody like The Rock.
Right.
You're not going to see Phil Heath on the cover anymore. You're not going to see a big freak. It's almost the anti-fitness idea. We have more people espousing to a healthier look than we have trying to be these big guys of the 90s.
What we're seeing with fitness in particular is a melding of wellness and fitness that's now going mainstream. Global. And the extreme, freak bodybuilder look is anti that. People are kind of privy now to what you have to do to look that way and how it's not healthy. Did all this pharmacology, this advancement of, the amount of drugs people were using and what they were using, did that change how people started dieting and training? Because you mentioned training 2 hours to 3 hours in the gym. Flex was over here talking about dieting. I've talked to other bodybuilders from the 90s who talked about how dieting was so important. And you guys were so, and again, I don't want to be biased because I did follow it that era, but it seems like everybody was way more conditioned then than they were today. Has the training and diet changed and evolved because of it?
Of course it has. I mean, look, we don't even have a teenage division anymore. I promote shows and I don't have teenage because nobody shows up for them. But when I was coming up, the teenage division was ripe with athletes that wanted to be like the guys in the magazines. And now there's not a whole lot of magazines, number one, but there's not a whole lot of role models. There's not a whole lot of superstars that people can aspire to want to look like. So these guys are not only getting in the game late, but they're staying longer. You know, I got out at 36. I told you Lee Haney retired at 31 years old. We were in our primes in our 20s. And now when you look at that lineup of the Mr. Olympia, I believe Sean Roden won it. I think he's like 43 years old. Phil Heath will be 40 this year. Dexter Jackson was he's turning 50.
Yeah.
The age factor for these guys, it's like they've been there for so long and there's nobody coming up. Like, I don't even know who the next big thing is, but when I was coming up, I saw Flex Wheeler coming up behind me and Kevin Lavrone and Chris Cormier. These guys were coming out of the teenage ranks and they were going to have a nice long run. We don't have that gene pool anymore, and I think it has a lot to do with the pharmacology of it. You know, these guys are afraid to go do the things that are necessary. And instead of actually finding out and learning their bodies, they're going straight to the guru first. So, you know, as soon as you find out you have a passion for bodybuilding, you're going to go over there and try to pay this guy to teach you how to look a certain way. And this guy's going to load you up. And then you're going to wind up getting a sponsor that's going to give you all the things. I just keep thinking about Dallas McCarver because that's what happened. You know, here's a guy with all this potential, this supplement owner guy that comes over and throws all this crap at him. And then he goes and he gets Chad Nichols, who's got his fingerprints on all these bodybuilders that are dead, that worked with Ronnie Coleman, that worked with a lot of these guys, Nasser El-Sambadi and Art Atwood and Don Youngblood. They're all dead. And then this 25-year-old's enlisting this guy's help.
Who's your friend that did not slap you upside the head on that one?
Yeah, and I said it. I went on record. I go, you don't want to be working with this guy. You're not going to be long for this earth. And then 6 months later, he was dead.
Wow.
Because they were fast tracked. Well, I've got this coach that's worked with all these guys, and I got this supplement owner that's giving me all this shit and all this stuff. It's a Molotov cocktail waiting to just explode. And it was a party, and boom.
Now, you know, my background, my professional background is training, and that's what we do. We write exercise and workout programs. We understand resistance training, and we understand that there's a lot of science behind them. And I feel like today training is just vanilla because it's all about the pharmacology. Nobody's really focusing on what you can do specifically with your training. Now, if you go and read the bodybuilding magazines and articles from the 70s, 80s, and even the early to mid 90s, you had bodybuilders experimenting, trying different methods of training. You know, it was almost like more of a focus. Am I accurate with this?
No, listen. Back when I was coming up and prior to me, we were all students of the game. I used to love to watch Mike Tyson. We're almost the same age, but when he was coming up and he was young, he always prided himself that he was a student. He knew everything that happened in boxing all the way up until his era. He studied what happened before so he could apply it to his future as a bodybuilder. As an athlete, you got to know where you're going, but you also have to see where you're coming from. These bodybuilders have, their history right now is Jay Cutler. Oh, wow. They don't even know what the hell happened before Jay Cutler because Jay's still on social media, right? Or it's Phil Heath, who's had a 7 or 8 year run as Mr. Olympia. So they don't go back further and further to its origins. The same things that Arnold and Sergio Oliva were doing and Frank Zane, they apply today. But now you got some guy that's got you doing some CrossFit shit and has you on this, you know, vegan diet and they're taking their cell phones in the gym. It's such a distraction, right? So the cell phone, the digital age is such an interference with actually going in and putting in the work. Yeah. I went in the gym. I had nothing that was going to distract me. I didn't wear headphones when I trained. And, you know, I give the guy a CD or a cassette tape, put my cassette that I made at home and play it while I'm working out. But there was zero distractions that were taking my mind off of the business at hand. And now it's like, I got to get this picture. I got to get these likes. I got to get these followers. And everybody, you show me a bodybuilder with a phone in the gym, I'll show you somebody that's not really working hard.
I was going to ask you about social media as far as what you see as like the benefits to it business wise versus the detriments of it.
Well, clearly the magazines have gone by the way the 8-track. So now you have a little bit more control over what you want people to know about you or perceive about you. Before I had to do an interview with a guy with a tape recorder, you got to, as an editor, go back, transcribe it, and then you as the editor have to add the pictures to the interview. And typically they were pretty much right on point, although you can make me sound like I'm a lot smarter because you're an editor. if the bodybuilding didn't write. I wrote my entire career. I wrote for Joe Weider, Muscle and Fitness, Flex, Muscle Mag, Muscular Development. So I prided myself on being able to articulate who I am and what I am. So my persona was created by me. In this digital age, you can do and make yourself look however you want. Stand in front of the Ferrari,
Photoshop,
have the hot chicks, Photoshop the abs.
Only photos after your competition that get posted, right?
Yeah, in the best lighting. I mean, you can kind of control that market that you want to create for yourself, and there's going to be people out there to get it. I said in the Generation Iron video, I said, you can have a chick that nobody even knows. She takes a bunch of pictures of her ass. She's got 5 million followers. All there is ass shots. Somebody likes it. And so the more people that like it, you keep on kind of giving them what they want. There's a lot of guys out there that are just outrageous, right? They just do crazy shit. Callum Von Mulger, kind of an adventurous guy. He's rock climbing. He's doing sea-doos. He's doing all this shit. And now he's all torn up. He tore his bicep. He blew out his knee, doing all this crazy shit. But people are following that, waiting for that accident. It's a train wreck waiting to happen. A guy that's got a great physique with all this potential who's coming over that kind of sounds like Arnold Schwarzenegger. You have to be careful. And there are guys out there that are hiring digital marketing firms to help build their following so that they can get monetized. And then they take it from the likes and followers to the digital, to the YouTube, to all. There's a lot of opportunities to control our business. Whereas before we had to rely solely on the magazines. However, I came up at a time where I was paid for that. I liked the idea that Joe Reeder was writing me a check every month and using my pictures in his magazines. And all I had to do was go eat, sleep, and train. I was a paid professional athlete. I didn't have to worry about marketing myself. I just had to be there to take those photos.
Is it still predominantly supplement companies that are hunting for these athletes, or is it other companies you're seeing?
No, there's a lot more. I mean, you got clothing companies. I work with a clothing company, luxury men's. This is my plug right now. My luxury apparel. It's called Leo Michi. You can't hardly see it, but it's new to the market. You see the bodybuilders wearing sweats and stuff like that all the time, and these guys are kind of like the Gucci brand, where you can kind of have some upscale, like Juicy Couture for women type clothing for men, and you start to see other opportunities being sponsored with tanning companies. Gym lines are still big in terms of sponsoring athletes. You got the Middle East coming over really big, where the guys are going over to Kuwait and
coming back 30 pounds heavier.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of companies that need that name, face recognition. But as an ambassador that's out of the industry, I have a huge networking database where I can bring a supplement company like G6 Sports Nutrition, who I work with, and I help them get distribution all over the world. And that's good for a new company that doesn't have any recognition.
I remember my first time ever going to a large bodybuilder convention. I think it was in 2001 in the Arnold Classic. And then I didn't go for a long time until a few years ago. It was incredibly different. I mean, the longest lines in 2001 or whatever were Mr. Olympia, second place, third place, top bodybuilders. A few years ago, I go there, those guys have the shortest lines. The longest lines are the dude that's got the Instagram page and the other guy that's got the YouTube channel. Guys that don't even compete. Totally different. It's changed everything.
Considering I never missed the Arnold Classic since 1989, I've watched that evolution. I was there when Rich Gaspari won that with 2,000 fans and 24 athletes. And of course, last year we celebrated the 30th anniversary, and there was 22,000 athletes, 200,000 fans over a 4-day period.
Wow.
I've been emceeing the amateurs for the past 5-6 years, where it has about 700, 800 athletes in it. So I've watched it evolve, and I've watched, like you said, the influx of these nameless, faceless, million-follower type millennial guys.
Influencers.
Influencers, and I can tell you they're doing a very good job. That's why their lines are long. And people have asked me, don't you feel like nobody's recognizing you? And I don't walk into these shows looking to be recognized. Even though that's my domain, that's where I come from. These guys have worked very hard to be recognized, and they put those shout-outs, come to my booth, come visit me, and these guys line up, whatever it is they're selling, they love it. And more power to them, because they're taking control of that little market. It's giving everybody an opportunity to get a piece of the pie. Whereas for the bodybuilder, most of us are kind of throwbacks. We just want to bodybuild and eat our chicken and rice and kind of do our thing. We're like our parents, we don't want to know how to work the phone. We just want one that works, right? Like my mom, I just need one to be able to dial. I go, Mom, you can check your email. You can actually watch a video, and no, just give me one that
I just want one that calls.
Now, do you think because of that, the politics, though, and knowing the politics in bodybuilding, do you think that that's going to start to influence how they judge?
No,
you don't think so?
No, because I mean, there's still a process of learning how to judge, and once you're in as a judge, you're pretty much a judge for life, unless there's some bad indiscretions that you're involved in. Judging a physique contest is not like rocket science, but once you're qualified to do it, there's a whole lot that has to take place to get that conspiracy effect that we want that guy for this reason. None of those judges are making any money off of Mr. Olympia, for example.
Okay.
I always kind of had a conspiracy theory, but my conspiracy theory coming up in the 90s was, listen, I would only have an opportunity to win if I have different opinions. Why am I being force-fed the same judges? If we have all these judges that are qualified and we're only having 12 judge the Olympia, why is it the only 12 that judge this year are going to be judging next year and the year after and the year after and the year after? So I was always against having the same opinions. I get it that you might have to have one head judge just to keep the decorum, but if this is an international show, let's have some international judges like they do in the Olympics, right? And maybe make it digital where as soon as the routine is over, you hit that 1 to 10, you see the score. So I was looking for some transparency. It's a little more complicated than that, but I thought, well, if they can do it in gymnastics or any of those subjective sports, because even though gymnastics has its degree of difficulty, it's still subjective.
Yeah.
How I see a landing is going to be different how you see a landing or how the cohesive the routine is. All that floor routine stuff, that's what I think about professional men's bodybuilding. And if they can score that, they should be able to do it in our sport. So I was coming from a place of I need new opinions if I'm going to have a chance to win.
Yeah. So you don't think it's going to, like, if someone goes up there and they have 2 million Instagram followers and a huge YouTube channel and they look decent, you don't think that may weigh a little bit more, and where the judge is going to say, okay, I might want to give this guy the nod because they're going to bring us a lot more attention. They're going to bring my event a lot. You don't think that's going to influence it?
No. I mean, you got to remember, like Shawn Ray had 1 million followers, and Phil Heath has like 2 million followers, and he has 7 Olympia titles. They didn't gain anything by having Shawn Ray win the Mr. Olympia. Right. I think everybody wants to see a champion get beat.
Right.
So, like when Bob Chick goes, is there any dispute from the audience for the judges? If they stood up and gave Shawn a round of applause. Sure. It was a standing ovation. So when that happens, it does give another spark because look, Shawn Ray won the Olympia, but everybody's beating Shawn Ray. I mean, William Bonig, Big Ramy, Dexter Jackson, all those guys are probably like, well, shit, maybe I can win next year.
Right.
So if nothing else, it's kind of fired these guys up. But I don't think it took anything away from the sport that the judges took it away from somebody like Phil. Now, when you're talking about somebody that's just popular, this is a sport of you still have to have the physique. You still got to have that knockout punch. You can't just go up there and go, you got 5 million followers and you don't look as good as this guy with no followers. Like, it's still, you can't sell that to the fans. They're selling these tickets for hundreds of dollars. So if you go there and they're selling you something that you just don't believe in, it's going to be corrupt from the core, and they don't want to lose that.
What about what do you think about like the politics of like coaches that have big brands that also sponsor a lot of these shows and they have athletes in the show? You don't see that?
Well, it's inevitable, but I mean, I don't think it's enough there. There's not enough meat on the bone for a judge to favor this trainer who's got some influencers. Like, unless you're paying a judge, I mean, I don't see who would want to do that. There's just not enough meat on the bone for that. And I know, like, for example, Hani Rambad worked with Jay Cutler, he worked with Ronnie Coleman, and he worked 7 years with Phil Heath. He just happened to be with some of the best bodybuilders on the planet. He didn't make them. He just kind of latched on with those guys. He's going to have to now find somebody else to latch onto, but he didn't have any more influence over who was going to win that title than I would, for example.
What's your thoughts on him? I'm not really impressed by him at first glance, but I don't know enough about him.
Hani as a trainer, I don't know enough about him either. I mean, he's definitely one of those guys that's been able to latch on to the right big fish. Right. Because when you're talking about being in and around Ronnie Coleman's camp and then getting a young Phil Heath. Actually, he had Jay Cutler too. And then getting a young Phil Heath, and he's got Jeremy Mudia. He's been in the right Olympia frame of mind. And you know what? When you're around that, people polarize to you. He might be getting emails or text messages or DMs going, hey, help me the way you're helping them. So he's helping the right people to have people probably on a waiting list.
Yeah.
You can't fault that. But of course, I'm not that guy that's going to let you take control over my
career. And I also feel like you could look at the pictures of the people asking you to help them and be like, I think I'll help that guy. Yeah. They look like they've got some big time potential, right?
I'm notorious for being anti-trainer, anti-guru because I'm still coming from the old school. Like this, I'm the artist. Right. Okay, so now let's just say this is an art show and all four of us are painters. And we walk in this room and all we got is a blank canvas and our brushes and our oils. And it's an even playing field because we all have the same tools to work with, just as a bodybuilder does. But we're all independent. and there's our judge sitting there telling us to draw. Well, we're all going to come from a different place. You might draw the ocean, you might draw some cars, you draw some birds, and I might draw a person. When we're done, however long that might take, we're going to have to turn those pictures around and let them judge it. Physique show's no different, because there's Nasser, and there's Flex, and there's Ronnie, and then there's me. We don't even look anything alike in terms of genetic makeup, but somebody's got to pick a winner. We might look close in terms of the artistry. It might look, he's really big and he's really cut and he's got nice lines and I pose the best. Someone's got to pick a winner out of these forms of art. Well, I want to sign that picture with my name on it. I certainly don't want your fingerprints all over my work. And to give that up to somebody and say, I do these interviews after the show. I say, so what's your next contest? Oh, we got to talk to my trainer. So what did you eat? How did you train? Well, me and my coach did this, that, and the other. I can't stand that. It's the worst because you don't even own what you're showing me. It's not yours. You're giving that guy all the credit, or you're blaming this nutritionist over here. So that's probably what led to me being so, laser focused on trying to bring my best product, is because it all rose to the top or sank to the bottom with what I do from day in, day out, year after year after year. And I'm living proof. I'm not a rocket science. I never knew how many calories I ate. I never took any measurements. I don't know how many grams are in a
So you never counted macros or anything like that?
I don't know how many grams of protein are in a chicken breast or in a fucking potato.
All intuition, huh?
And nor did I care. At the end of the day, when I stand next to this guy, those judges aren't asking any of those questions. It's not relevant how many calories I burned today or how many I'm going to eat tomorrow. And you got the trainers that are trying to get you to believe you need to know all this shit. I thought, garbage in, garbage out. I didn't need to know how many calories I ate, because I certainly had no idea how many calories I was burning per day. That's just so much time consuming. How much is this? I need a 12-ounce chicken breast. Well, who decided you need a 12-ounce chicken breast? Eat. When I wanted to get big, I just ate. I consumed food at a regular pace, 6, 9, 12, 3, 6, 9. I was a machine. I didn't need someone to tell me what to eat, when to eat, and I certainly didn't need to ask my coach, hey, coach, what do you think we should do? What's our next competition? Like, own your shit. I wanted to be Mr. Olympia, so I picked and choose what shows I needed to go into. And as I had a measure of success, I raised the level of competition. That's not rocket science, but today it sounds like a foreign language when I talk to these athletes. I got to talk to my coach. My trainer has to tell me what to do. My dietitian needs to tell me what to eat. I'm like, how much money do you have to burn?
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot of money, and there's a lot of hands in that thing. And then when it doesn't go right as an athlete, you sit back and you start taking inventory. Where did we go wrong? And of course, the trainer's going to be like, he's got 10 other athletes. Hey, leave me a voicemail. I'll get to you when I'm free. I discourage athletes from giving away what they should own, especially in the beginning. Learn your body. Use the mirror as your guide. Bulk up and diet down and see what you're able to do on your own.
I almost feel like it's because they try to rush it, because I think like someone like yourself, for sure you got better at what you were doing over time because you learned your body. You knew, I need to eat more of this. Yeah, I need to eat more of this. I need to eat a little more of that. I know what makes me feel bloated. I know what gives me more energy. I know what builds more muscle for me. Whereas I think a lot of the current, athletes go in and be like, okay, I want to compete. I want to be on stage in a year. I don't know my body. Tell me what to do.
And they pay for that. And you know what? There's no return on that. If you have a little bit of success, then the guy winds up reeling you in even more, right? Now you need me because I helped you become who you are. And you stay with this guy because you think, well, I did it with him, so I got to stay with him. He's got the winning formula. Now you're suddenly the life coach. You're telling him what to do with his money. You're telling him what girlfriend he should date. You're telling him when you should, suddenly you've just given all this control to this guy who's like your pastor, your advisor, your trainer, your nutritionist. And I see it so much that it makes me sick, especially when it comes to the women, because there's a lot more naivety in the women. They got these women with these men coaches trying to tell them what they need to do. Right. I've never seen a man walking around in high heels unless it was RuPaul. These guys are taking these girls and they're turning them into things that they shouldn't be. Yeah. Like if I'm a girl, I want to have a girl that I want to look like maybe help me.
Yeah, it's almost like it's the perfect sport for it too, because quite frank, people tend to go to the extreme when it comes to training because of insecurities in their body, and they don't like. So it's almost like it's ripe for someone to come and prey on these insecure people and say, "I'll tell you what to do. I'll make you look better."
This is a sport of misfits. You'll find behind every success story. I watched your interview with Flex. Behind every successful athlete in here, there's something that's messed up. I don't want to say I'm the exception to the rule. I'm okay. I'm not. I come from good stock. I'm the son of a janitor. My mom was a CPA, and I'm the youngest of 8, so I was the last one to eat, got the smallest piece of meat. But I found that bodybuilding gave me confidence. And when you have success, like coming from football as an MVP, I came in like, let's do this. And when you get success immediately, that confidence starts to reinforce that, you can do anything. And then there's the other one. You have the hot chick that comes in here. She's a little bit overweight, and she gets into shape and she wins a contest, but she still sees a fat chick, right? Like in her mind, her butt's flabby, or in her mind, her boobs aren't big enough, or the bodybuilder that comes in and he's small and he gets big, but he still thinks it's just not big enough. And it's called bigorexia. Just constantly striving to get bigger. And those insecurities, if you're a jerk and you come into this sport and you have some success, Craig Titus, you get some success, you're on the magazines, you get a couple of honeys and stuff, and next thing you think you can do anything you want. I mean, it reminded me of like Donald Trump, and he's like, I just grab her by the pussy, I put a breath mint in, and they'll let you do whatever they want. All that stuff just magnifies itself when you're successful in this sport of testosterone. And it does go both ways. There's a lot of girls out there that are kind of over the top. It's very hard to find that happy medium. And some of the examples I was coming up behind, Lee Labrada, Lee Haney, very balanced, and very calculated individuals. Gaspari, they're still around. They still have this footprint. Healthy, still have their balance, because they did have other things outside of bodybuilding, whereas a lot of our athletes that are champions, the only thing that defines them is the gym. So when it's over, they stay like hardcore in the gym. There's no life after bodybuilding, which I believe a lot of it is why when we see Ronnie Coleman, these are injuries that are taking place now. Like, dude, take your foot off the gas, go golfing, go swimming, enjoy your kids, like get away from it. But you stick around in there and you're trying to be something that you can no longer be because of Father Time, you start to fall apart.
Yeah. But have you seen, what kind of changes have you seen in the way these athletes train? When you were training versus maybe how they train now, or is it the same?
We call it the pussification of bodybuilding.
Really?
These guys are pussified, man. You don't see anybody in there doing the business. I'm telling you, you're not going to find from the Mr. Olympia on down anybody in that gym going balls to the wall. You're just not going to find it.
It's just different.
It's different. I talk with guys like Chris Cormier is one of my good friends. He trains a lot of the guys. I mean, they don't want to be pushed. There's a limit that they will go to. Big Ramy, he's worked with Big Ramy, and Big Ramy's had a certain level of success. But even him, it's like, you can't push me too far because I'm already here. And then you can't get to that next level. I remember training with John Brown as a 17-year-old. Luckily, the roots the seeds were planted into the roots of my career very early, that just when I thought I went to my limit, John Brown would take me out a little bit further from shore. And it's like I had to swim back, These guys, when you watch them train, they're only going to knee high in the water. They're not going to go to the deep end of the pool. They don't have to. And that's why when you look at the depth of that field, I mean, most of these guys look like they're guest posing when they're in Olympia. I mean, after third place, I'm like, I could beat them now. I just got to go do a little bit of cardio. That's third, that's fourth, that's fifth place in the world. I mean, where did the quality go? It's just gone. And it's because they look around and like, you're not going to do a posing routine, so I'm not going to do a posing routine. And, you're not going to be doing cardio, so I'm not going to do cardio. So they're only as good as what they're around. I used to see my competitors in Gold's Gym. I went in there when I saw Flex and Chris. I had to go in the posing room after Charles Glass to bring Flex Wheeler and Chris Cormier out. And now it's my turn, and there's a puddle of fucking sweat on the ground. I got to match that. I remember watching Muhammad Ali's story, and the trainer for Muhammad Ali, as he got ready to fight George Foreman in Zaire, he said, I would go and watch George Foreman work out, and he'd just hit that heavy bag. He was slow, but he'd hit the shit out of that heavy bag. And then we would bring Muhammad in afterwards so he could see the indentation on that heavy bag of what he was going to be going up against. And he thought, I feared for my fighter, because I knew that he couldn't withstand this type of punishment. Well, that's how I felt looking back, going in the posing room. When I would see the sweat on the ground, I got to match that or I got to double it, because they were working their asses off. And when I go in the gym and I saw them train, I would leave their gym and go to my gym, and I would try to double it. So we saw each other train. We had the ability to kind of know what we're up against, and we had to raise our expectation in order to beat those guys. Now, they're sitting there freaking doing absolutely nothing in the gym except talking on the phone. The trainers, the towel around the neck. It's almost like it's watered down. So the quality is not as good.
So it's less volume and frequency and all that? Because I mean, you look at some of the routines like Arnold, he trained his whole body 3 days a week, double split routine. He's doing 20 sets per body part per workout.
Yeah.
You got guys like Serge Nubret back then who was doing sometimes 40 to 50 sets per body part. I know how you trained was absolutely insane. Dorian, whose volume was low, trained so hard that the guy, I'm surprised he's still alive.
Right.
And you don't see like that.
No,
anymore,
you
huh?
don't see it, and you're not inspired by it. There's nobody out there that you can actually follow and go, holy shit, like, wow, it's impressive to watch. I mean, they don't go to that degree, and they don't have to, because nobody else is going to that degree. I mean, listen, William Bonek's a good little bodybuilder, but he's just good. I mean, he's not going to be great because there's not a whole lot he can do with his physique. If you want to impress me, come in shredded. Right, he's got all the muscle that he can handle. And I told his trainer, Neil Hill, I said, if he eats a potato next year, he's going to be too heavy. And he came in too heavy. I almost feel like Nostradamus when it comes to these physiques. But they need to go the other way. If they really want to, like, Big Ramy could be Mr. Olympia if he lost 20 pounds.
Right.
So, like, how many times are you going to have that opportunity? Okay, you got second. Now you got fifth. Either you're going to retire or you're going to come in shredded. Right? Because coming in big is not what you need to. You got beat by William Bonek. And William Bonek's shorter than I am. A guy that Big Ramy should never get beat by. Is nobody looking at Ramy and going, look, stay away from your legs? Like, you got to do something different, because if you keep doing the same thing, you're going to get the same results. But we can't find anything on Instagram or on YouTube or anything that's really inspirational about these bodybuilders training today, because they're just not doing the work. You want to see something that's crazy and inspirational? Watch some Ronnie Coleman shit.
Yeah.
I mean,
He looks like he's going to war each time.
But
deadlifting
you don't-
800 pounds
yeah.
going into fucking prep.
You don't even have to go that far. Yeah, the 800 pounds is impressive. I'd like to be doing that with 350 pounds. Just going to war with the weight. You don't have to do the volume of weight, because height to weight ratio, there's a difference. You have to know your limitations. But I could do the same thing with 350-pound deadlifts and make it feel like the Ronnie Coleman 800-pound deadlifts, but no one wants to do that. As a matter of fact, I don't even see the guys deadlifting or doing hyperextensions for that matter.
That blew my mind. So I got into men's physique, right? I'm a men's physique pro, and when I got into that space, it blew my mind to see all these athletes just neglecting some of the biggest gross motor movements. I'm like, these are the biggest bang for your buck movements, and you're out there telling people to stay away from deadlifting because you're afraid it's going to build your waist.
Yeah, it's
and then
amazing.
wearing fucking
the girdle
corsets. What the fuck is that?
Yeah.
Listen,
what the
man,
fuck is
if
that?
you start seeing all these guys doing it, you're going to think you need it. And guess who's getting rich? The corset maker. I need to make some of those things and put my name on them, right? And go, hey guys. But it's amazing what people will buy into, because if they see somebody, if I'm wearing these headphones in the gym, you're going to probably wind up getting a pair of the headphones if I'm on top of my game.
Right.
You have to go back to the roots of just eat, sleeping, and training. Dumb it down, simplify it. And again, if you know the history, then you just do what the guys that were great used to do, and you could maybe have a better chance to get there.
When in your peak, when you were training your hardest, what did your workouts? How long were they taking you in the gym? And
I that was my job, so it wasn't like I worked out and I went to work.
Yeah.
I had the good fortune of having numerous sponsors that facilitated me being able to just go to the gym, come home and eat and take a nap and watch TV. I never got into playing games. I didn't do things that just wasted my time. More often than not, I would be working on my calendar year prior. That's why I was able to get away with competing once a year at the Olympia. How does he make his money? I made sure that I was in all the places the other bodybuilders weren't. When the Mr. Olympia was over in September, I took off until January. I only needed 9 months to get ready. I didn't need a full year. So January, I'd start my training.
Did you take off for training?
Yeah, I didn't need to lift. I mean, I barely lifted weights. I mean, I did go in and exercise.
This is interesting because
call it working
I've
out.
now seen some studies that show that might actually be beneficial. And I know there were other bodybuilders that would do that as well.
Kevin Lavrone would do it.
Yeah, you would actually,
Kevin.
totally look completely different and then get back in it. Did you find that benefited your physique?
Well, it was all I knew. Coming up, when the show was over in September, which was every September, it was always around my birthday, I used about 2 months to kind of make my appearances, so there was some maintenance training in there, but I wouldn't even call it working out because I didn't really push myself. But November and December were just holiday time, and then I'd start to ramp it back up in January, but not thinking I was doing something earth-shattering. It was just always a part of my training. I knew I didn't need a whole year to change the way that I looked. And from January to March, I would use that as like trying to get the soreness out. From March until June, I would start trying to ramp up a little bit of size and weight. From June till whatever, August, I would start to kind of like clean up my diet, and then I'd turn it on for the Mr. Olympia. I was doing that. I didn't know Kevin was doing it, but most of the guys, they jump right back on the saddle, and you just wind up, getting yourself ripe for injury or burnout. But
Kevin looks great still.
Yeah, I enjoyed lifting weights, but I think part of the love affair was I got the chance to get away from it. I mean, I was one of the few guys that did a lot of recreational things. I had other interests, especially sports-wise. I loved any type of sports. I read 2 and 3 newspapers a day, and when I traveled, I was a historian, going to the places where I used to do book reports on, like South Africa, when I went over to see the cell that Nelson Mandela was held captive in for 27 years. I wrote book reports on that in high school and college, so my interest was outside the realm of bodybuilding. I like to do things that would stimulate my mind. So when I got back into start bodybuilding, I missed it. And now I can fire up. And the reason why it stands out so prominent now to me is that because I remember talking to guys like Chris and Flex and Paul Dillette. They were just so downtrodden and one-dimensional, playing lots of video games. And Melvin Anthony, they just didn't have any hobbies or interests. And also they removed themselves from some of their family. Whereas I was always close to home. I was in a 30-mile radius from where I was born. So when my gym time was done, I'm hanging out with guys I went to elementary school with, played football with in high school, went to parties and social events with people that I knew that knew me, not as a bodybuilder, but knew me as Shawn Ray. Most of the bodybuilders were coming out to Gold's Gym or from someplace else, didn't have any family, didn't have any friends, didn't have any interests. So I kind of distanced myself from that nomadic bodybuilding world of just like, it gets very dark because again, your mind, it's all about how you look, it's how you feel, it's how much money you're making, what you're sacrificing, the drugs that you're on, and then the influencers that are around you. They're fans, they're not really friends. You don't trust anybody, you don't really know anybody. So there's a lot of identity that gets stripped away when you start going after this thing called Mr. Olympia, especially when you bring it over to Gold's Gym in Venice. And me, coming from Orange County, I could kind of go into Gold's Gym and come back to the real world and be where I'm born and where I'm from with people that, know and love me. But yeah, the landscape has totally changed. There's no friends. There's no camaraderie. You can't go into Gold's Gym and know that you're going to see the guy in the magazines are going to be there training. When I walked in the gym, there's Tom Platz, there's Mike Christian, there's Bob Paris, there's Hulk Hogan, there's Magic Johnson. I mean, Gold's was the place to be. It was like Studio 54 in the 80s. Now, where do you go? If I'm a bodybuilder, I'm thinking, do I go to Kuwait? Because, these guys are actually doing some pretty good things over there. But there's, I think, more physique guys coming out of there than there are hardcore bodybuilders. So there's really no home base. There's no Joe Weider. There's no magazine that you can look forward to getting on the cover. There's no guarantee that someone's going to give you a contract if you win shows. I mean, back in the day, if you win certain shows, you knew something was waiting for you, something good. Whether you were black, white, or big or small, you had opportunity to make money. Now you've got to find ways to make that kind of money. A
lot is changing. I mean, we just talked about how you think the future of bodybuilding is classic or physique, and how it's not about being in the magazines as much as it is about social media. And there's some other big changes that we're noticing now. We're in the business of media and fitness, and we see, for example, I'll give you a great example. Bodybuilding.com was one of the most visited websites, period, on the internet. And over the last few years, the visits that they've seen have dramatically started to decline. They were the number one seller of supplements. Amazon now is starting to move in and starting to take over. What do you see in the future for this kind of stuff? Do you think
it's still part of the evolution? Isn't that what happened to Gold's and Powerhouse and Worlds?
Yeah.
Then we start seeing 24-hour and EOS Fitness and Crunch Fitness and Planet Fitness. I mean, even with the Apple, you got Galaxy and all the Samsung and all this other competition. Someone's got to start with the footprint, and then there's going to be all these other opportunities that come from that footprint. I just watched the movie Bigger about the Joe and Ben Weaver story.
I haven't seen that yet. How was it?
It took me back to a simpler place and time. When I look at that picture up there, it's just such a simple, slow time. But when they were doing what they were doing to create what we have now, there wasn't a lot of competition, although they had one nemesis, which was this guy from the AAU. So this one guy wanted to suppress him. He came from a powerlifting and strength type thing. Remember, you were talking about the combination of physique and these activities. Well, you had this nemesis, and with that nemesis, it forces you to have to stay on your toes and keep on creating. And with bodybuilding and bodybuilding.com, it was all about bodybuilding. We didn't have bikini and physique and figure and classic and all these other things. And it was a one-stop shop. But eventually, as you add all these other things to it, including sportswear and clothing and all these other items, you're going to see competition come. And I think competition's good. Bodybuilding.com, I was one of the original writers for Jeremy and his brother Ryan DeLuca and Russ, the father. For them to sell that at $100 million and go on and do other things, that's awesome. I was there with Joe Weider when he sold to AMI for $320 million, I believe it was. Awesome. I'm watching this movie Bigger, where they're kind of showing that the origins of it all, starting with a printing press and a 15-cent magazine, and then creating all the universe in America to create the Mr. Olympia. I'm one of those guys, again, when I told you I'm a historian, that was looking at that movie and seeing Arnold and Sergio, and you can imagine me being born in 65, and then watching them name the Mr. Olympia in 65, and then having an opportunity to become friends with Larry Scott, the original Mr. Olympia, knowing Sergio Oliva, and now knowing his son, Sergio Jr., winning the Arnold Classic in 1990 and 91, actually winning it, losing it, and then working as a commentator for Arnold Schwarzenegger, and then covering his shows in Brazil and in Spain and Australia. I feel like I'm one of the very few throwbacks that have a connection with working with Joe and Ben, with Arnold, and knowing every Mr. Olympia there is, knowing that the Mr. Olympia title, the first time they had the Sandow Trophy was 1977, and of course that was Frank Zane that got the first trophy. Phil Heath, who won the Mr. Olympia 7 times, his first pro win was the Shawn Ray Classic in Colorado. I feel like I've journeyed through this thing and watched it evolve and change, and now I'm still living in the evolution and the change of it, but I'm one of the few that embraces it. I like the idea that you have all of these different gyms, all these different websites, Amazon. Some of them are taking it to the next level. I commentated the Mr. Olympia for Amazon.com a year ago, and this year it was by iHerb.com. They're giving us a platform to project out to the world.
Yeah.
And I'm in the world. I'm in India, I'm in China, I'm in Australia. Bodybuilding is global. And because of companies like bodybuilding.com and because of companies like Amazon, the entire world is getting a re-education, I should say, about who I am. It gives me legs and strength that all that bodybuilding education I have is not being wasted, because I can take it into places that, like Joe and Ben did. Can you imagine them traveling back in the 30s and 40s to all these different countries trying to plant seeds for the IFBB? And now here I am in 2018 traveling to those countries where they planted the seeds and putting on shows. I mean, I'm emceeing shows in China. You know, they speak Chinese in China, but we have enough athletes and enough judges that speak English, and they need that moderator. And I'm able to bring enough stage experience to carry the flow of the contest so that it comes off professional. I had the opportunity to MC the Mr. Olympia in 2006 and 7, a show that I idolized when I was 17 years old. I competed in it for 14 years, then I turn around, I'm MCing it. So I'm very lucky to be part of that evolution. You're noticing it with maybe a different set of eyes, but for me, all of these new companies coming in is just, I think, enriching our sport and also making it more inclusive.
Yeah. Joe Weider is widely regarded as one of the obviously the godfather of the sport. And a lot of people don't know his brother Ben quite as much. And Ben's big goal was the Olympics, was to get bodybuilding Olympics. Have they given up on that?
I think so. Listen, I think on some level, Rafael Santoja was trying to carry that torch. It sounds great, but at the end of the day, if they're not doing the drug testing, it's not going in the Olympics anyways. Yeah. And I just watched a documentary on one of the Russian drug guys that was working with the cyclists.
Yeah, I saw that one.
Yeah, he said all of the guys the whole thing was a farce, right? So,
oh my God, yeah.
To have all that drug testing talk from WADA and all that stuff, it just is a big, stinky mess. And I think that at the end of the day, again, this is a physique show as much as it is a race car event. When you watch NASCAR, you're not thinking about steroids, but those guys are amped up on Adderall and all kind of shit, you know? The drivers I'm talking about. Yeah. And the cars are juiced up with all kind of extra, it's not the gas that we use.
Right.
But we tune in because we either want to see a great race or we want to see a train wreck.
Right.
And so you're right. People are going to tune into bodybuilding because they want to see that Jurassic Park. They want to go see the big dinosaurs, man. They want to see, but they are becoming dinosaurs. There's fewer and fewer of them. And I think it's because we realize they don't live that long, you know, and it's a scary place to be. If you're a 5'10", 6-foot bodybuilder, you know you're going to have to be 300 pounds if you're going to be anything.
Right.
And now you got to figure out what I have to do to get there.
What are some of the biggest, I guess, I don't know what the right word would be used, but risks for the sport and business of bodybuilding today? I remember when like the injectable like synthol started becoming a big thing, and a lot of people were worried like that's different. You're not building muscle. Is there anything you see that threatens the sport now, or trends and stuff that you're like, okay, we need to stop that?
Yeah, you know, it's funny because before we looked at that kind of on a curious note, and now we frown on it. Like a bodybuilder sees another bodybuilder with synthol. You know, it's like us sitting here smoking a joint and suddenly somebody pulls out a crack pipe. Hey, wait a minute. You're taking it to a different level. Yeah. Slow down, man. I just want to get high. I don't want to die. So when we see a meathead walking around with all this synthol, I mean, it's like, dude, what the hell are you trying to do? Like, you're making it bad for me.
Right. Yeah.
Don't call yourself a bodybuilder. I mean, that's not even, you didn't even partially work to get that look, you know? So, and it's different if you're a girl getting a boob job. We can respect that and appreciate it because she's trying to enhance her femininity.
Right.
But the synthol is not trying to enhance your masculinity. It's almost making a joke out of what it is that we're in the gym trying to develop.
Is it more rampant now, or are people starting to scale back?
I don't think it's more rampant. I think it's probably on a global scale, not in the U.S., is something we see with more frequency because there's a lot of meatheads out there thinking that this is how you do it.
Yeah.
Not enough education. And once it's done, it's very hard to undo. You know, we had Greg Valentino and a couple of other people around here that we could point our fingers at. I'm pretty sure Rich Piana had that shit going on.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure that contributed to his death. But now that we know that that's part of a contributing factor, I think Americans are smart enough that we can't even get on stage and get away with that. But you see people from these other countries through Instagram and on gym fuckery on Instagram, you see these guys popping up and you're like, what the hell are they thinking? And not to be naive about it, they can't undo it because the skin stretches so much that how do you even suck it out? You know, it's almost probably more dangerous to take that shit out than to leave it in. And you know where that's going. It's going to go right to the arteries and the heart, and there's going to be some clogging and some blockage. And who's going to live that long with those, you know, those lumps and bumps?
It's funny because synthol was probably being used in the 90s to a small degree by certain people. It wasn't super well known. It was later on that it became popular. And it's funny because I think back to some of the bodybuilders back then, and I wonder if like Ernie Taylor was a bodybuilder. I thought he had this crazy look to his arms, and you think, did he use synthol back then? And then there was that one guy, Manfred Horabel.
I think he died.
Yeah, biggest
German.
arms in the world. Nobody knew about synthol back then, so everybody just thought this guy had insane arms. Right. For sure, he was using some shit in his arms.
Yeah, and even Nasser El-Somebody to a degree. You saw his bicep. I was complaining about him in '96 when he got third to me. Then he got second in '97. I said, he's putting shit in his shoulders. I can see it in his biceps. I see it in his calves. You guys don't see this? Like, I'm talking to officials. You guys don't see this? Why would you reward it? It's going to get worse.
Yeah.
Right.
And then Nasser from '97 and '98, he wound up not even being able to make the top 10 of a regular show. Then he was in need of a kidney, and then he was in need of a heart, and of course, then he died. So I would imagine if somebody had gotten his ear, maybe he would have pumped his brakes. But you know, it's hard to control what a man is doing in his free time because we're adults.
Well, especially when you're rewarding it.
Yeah, and it's getting rewarded. But even with, like you said, with Ernie had a certain measure of success, and we all knew something's going on. Whether it's synthol or whatever it is, it's not uniform to what we're rewarding.
It looks
here.
so
mark
different.
him down. Yeah, it looks so different that you got to mark him down.
Yeah.
Because if you just keep him in the game, he's going to keep doing it. Because he thinks, well, you know, he should have put it in his calves, really, or his hamstrings. But
I remember when you were saying that Flex had calf implants in the magazine. I remember that big old.
So yeah, that was my strategy, right? I mean, I was smart like a fox. You know, Flex couldn't figure me out, but he couldn't deny that I would give him his props when I needed to, and that I'd take it all back when it was time to get ready for a show. I knew that he didn't have calf implants. I knew he was putting something in his calves, and that's all I needed to constitute like an investigation.
Yeah.
So here we were training in 1997 for the Arnold Classic, and he wins the competition and takes his money and he disappears. Now May, the New York Night of Champions is coming around. That's when I start getting ready for the Mr. Olympia, and he's looking for me. Hey man, when are we going to start training? And I'm thinking, I do not want to drag you through the gym to make you beat me, right? Because I carried him like every day. Like I walked into the gym, and when I saw him, like the air got sucked out of the gym. I'm amped. I go to the gym, I'm ready to get down. You go to the gym with him, it's like you're walking into a funeral. He's sitting there. For the amount of success he had, he miserably, I don't even want to say enjoyed. He miserably went through the steps. If he had a half an ounce of motivation that I had, he would have been Mr. Olympia without question. He definitely enjoyed the fruit of his labors, but it came with a lot of pain. And everyone in the camp that was around him had to feel that pain, because when he did a set, he's dropping on the floor.
We call that a negative Nancy. That's
he turns his back. As Mike said, he turns his back. He puts his hands on his head. You got to drag him off the bench to get him in there to do it. And you know that if he does it, he's going to be great. And when he's doing the work, he does the work. But in between is where the room gets, all the oxygen's taken away. It's a depressing, dark place. And I knew I was not going to get ready for the 97 Olympia with that as my responsibility. So I told him no. And he kind of got pissed off about it. But then that's when I saw his calves look like they were 23 inches. What it was is he came off the Arnold Classic, right? And after that, you kind of blow up. It gets big and round and literally cartoonish. But I knew something. He was putting like Esiclin or something in his calves. And this is a time where they were talking about they were going to start penalizing for implants. So I said, I don't know if that's a shot or if it's implants. I think it's an implant. I think that's an implant. Well, then prove me wrong and show us that it's not an implant. And he couldn't show us anything because it wasn't an implant. I mean, I knew that. But I kept that going up long enough. And by the way, we didn't have social media. We had these boards that we could talk on. And then it was, the president said you have to lodge a complaint. So we're all in this athletes meeting long before the Olympia, and I lodged my complaint. I said, look, I'll put it in writing. He's got calf implants. Lex's like, I'll get up and break your jaw. He wanted to fight me. They had to pull him. They had to pull him back in Santa Monica from a meeting. And I'm like, well, prove it. Go to a doctor, have those things examined. It was enough to create and give birth to the ninja story. Have you heard about the ninja story?
Bro, what was that?
That was Flex's imagination.
Bro, so correct me if I'm wrong. He pulled out of a contest because
the 97 Olympia.
He got attacked by dudes with katana swords.
Asians.
And he fought them all off with his taekwondo or something like that.
And he threw their keys and he got away and he went to the doctor.
Somebody give him some mushrooms? What happened?
What? So this is the calf implant story that I concocted. This is the psychological warfare.
You turned into ninjas?
So we use the term ninjas because they were Asian. Sorry about the racist. But this is Flex's account that he was driving somewhere and he stopped and some guys got out of the car and they wanted to take his car and he threw his keys and he had to take them on and he inflicted some damage, they inflicted damage, and he got away, and then he got home and he made a report that nobody ever saw. And then this is his out from the Olympia. This is a couple of weeks before the Olympia.
Yeah, because he had a cast or something on his arm covering.
But prior, I should say, it was after this incident had happened, he was being filmed for the battle for the Olympia. So it's documented. He's in there with his wife. He's doing his posing. He's smooth as a baby's ass from the hamstring. But he's got his genetics are carrying him. Like, if he was in the show, the Olympia this year, he'd have won it in that condition.
Yeah.
That's how good he was even when he was off. But he made the mistake of getting this film like after this incident happened. And you could clearly see that he was off. And then he had to go, and because you get fined if you get out of the Olympia without a medical excuse. So he found someone to put a soft cast on his hand, and he showed up at the 97 Olympia. He was wearing his best Sergio Oliva suit with glasses and had his hand up there prominently. Like if I wanted you to see my watch, I'd be up here like this the whole time. Right? He's up there with the cast, with the soft cast. Do you see I broke my hand? And he addresses the audience. I'm thinking, why are you giving him the microphone? If he's not competing, don't let him say anything. Like, really? When I got suspended in 1989 for not competing, I couldn't go to the audience and say, hey guys, sorry, I got hurt in the gym, so I'm not competing. They gave him this platform to address the audience because it was supposed to be his year.
That's right.
He won the Arnold in 97. He's supposed to win the Olympia. I got in his head so bad, and I'm sure he's hearing it from everybody. He's going to get tested, and his calves are going to get tested. He didn't know what would happen with this test, that he came up with this thing. He's got an imagination, okay? He lets his mind dictate what he's going to do. And I heard him tell you guys he wanted to come to my house and push me in the door and beat me up. And no one would know. That's where he's fucking twisted in the head. So I got him all wrapped up with his calf story, and he comes out with this story, and I said, what, a bunch of ninjas attacked you? What the hell is this, And I got third in that Mr. Olympia, and later on, somehow or another, I was able to kind of squash it with him and kind of calm the waters because he's highly testosterone driven. And I think he went on in 98 and won the Arnold Classic.
Yeah.
And that was like redemption for him to come back and win the competition and get the prize money. And I kind of let him off the hook and say, I tell everybody you don't have calf implants, but it was psychological warfare with him.
Yeah.
I had to get in his head to keep him from killing me. It was like really poking a bear because I didn't know he's really that he has some psychosis to him, and I came very close to probably dying.
That's so great. Did you actually during your career? Did you actually build any lifelong relationships or friends like other guys that you?
You know what? I don't think I did. Like Chris Cormier is a guy that came on my campus when I was 17 and he was 15, and he had heard about me because I'd already competed a couple of times, and he was like, I remember seeing him. He was there for a wrestling meet, and he was like, "You're Shawn Ray. Oh my God." Well, we kind of socially he's from a different side of the tracks. He's from Palm Springs, but we socially would run into each other. The year I won the California in '87, he won the teenage division. And then he would go on to kind of mimic and follow my career throughout. And he ran with Flex. Him and Flex were training partners pretty much for his whole career. But now in retirement, like he and I are closer than anybody that I've ever had a relationship with in the industry, because I put on these muscle camps. He comes in, he's the blue collar worker. He puts people through the workouts, and he finds me work and I find him work. But there's no one that I drug along with me
became best friends or anything like that with?
I didn't want to.
Oh, were there any people that you annoyed the fuck out of you that you didn't like?
Yeah, I didn't like Nasser. I love to poke fun at Lee Priest, so he still comes back at me.
Well, that's a good person to poke at because he's another smaller but also exceptional bodybuilder.
Yeah, and he's got a certain dry humor about him that I like to kind of hear it, so I keep poking him. But I didn't like the kind of person Nasser was. He played in a golf tournament that I had, a charity golf tournament for Children's Hospital of Orange County, and just too much arrogance and entitlement, and that comes with being a bodybuilder. But if you can't channel it right and turn that shit off when you're supposed to, it's who you are. And those kind of guys I don't dig, right? I mean, there's a certain responsibility we have as athletes that, you know what, first impressions are all they get, and if you fuck that up, it's hard to come back and fix it. Yeah. And there's been times I've seen on message boards like, "Oh, Shawn Ray's an asshole. I asked him for an autograph and at the Arnold Classic, and he left and ignored me." Yeah, well, how did that happen? Well, we were in the bathroom. Like, dude, don't come up to me in the bathroom trying to get an autograph. Yeah. I'm sitting there with my pictures out for hours. I put my pictures away, and I'm leaving the venue, and they want to buy a picture all of a sudden. I'm the kind of guy to say, "No, dude, go to my website. Send me an email or write me." There's a time and a place, and so I don't mind criticism from certain individuals, but I'm always aware of what I did and who I am as an ambassador and as a representative. The negative shit comes from me actually telling it like it is. If you're a bodybuilder and I critique you, I'm gonna do it in real time. It's unfiltered, and you might not like me after you're done with that. But you know what? The one thing you're gonna hear is the truth. I don't have a horse in the race, but there's a lot of bodybuilders I don't talk to today because they didn't like what I said about them as a physique person.
That's weak.
Yeah, it's very weak, but it's very abundant in this sport.
Well, I mean, you could argue that bodybuilding is probably the most, if not one of the most alpha sports. I mean, you build yourself to be the biggest monster. Maybe fighting, I would say, is maybe the other one. I mean, those two. So you definitely probably have some fragile egos.
And it starts from the top. I mean, I love Phil Heath, man, but he's on the message boards fighting with a bunch of
I know. I see him all the time debating with people on Instagram. Like, bro, what are you doing addressing Instagram trolls?
He's not alone in that. There's a lot of guys. I mean, Craig Titus would want to come to your house and beat you up for talking smack on his physique. I mean, King Kamalia, another guy that came up with me. There's so many guys out there. The one guy that was never that way was like somebody like Ronnie Coleman. Lee Haney. I mean, people that know they're good at what they do, they're pretty secure. The guys that it's like sand going through their hands, they come back and they want to fight and they don't want to hear that negative stuff. And it's still a mind fuck in this business because you are somebody that you built yourself to being, but it doesn't change who you are up here mentally. There's a lot of mental shit, especially with women, because when those lights go away, your value and your self-worth is how you're being seen in the world. And suddenly you're like, 5 years removed and you got a little bit more body fat, maybe a divorce or a kid or something, and suddenly you're trying to move in this industry and nobody knows who you are. The girls have it the hardest. I've talked to these girls. Tanya Knight won the Arnold Classic and I won with me. She looks great for her age. She went to the Arnold Classic. She's like, "Shawn, nobody knows me here." I go, "Who cares? You're here to watch the freaking show. I mean, you don't have to be known." "I know, but I see all these young girls." Well, of course it's young girls. The sport's continuing on. It's the next generation of athletes. But in the mind's eye, it's like I have to look a certain way in order just to move in this space.
I think competing on stage, I don't care if it's bodybuilding, physique, bikini, whatever, if you are confident in yourself, it will make you a more confident, self-assured, self-aware person. If you are insecure about your body, who you are, if you're just an insecure individual, bodybuilding or physique will
exaggerate,
destroy you.
Yeah, it will reveal that. And the thing about it is, like, I know I'm retired. I know I'm not putting in the work in the gym. So when I take my shirt off, I'm not trying to like impress anybody. And I'm not looking for somebody to notice me. God forbid somebody does notice me. Half the time when I go places, you see a picture of my feet. I want to show you the point of view. Like my mind, in my mind's eye, like when I travel the world, you see everybody doing selfies, right? They want you to see where they're at. Well, I want to give you perspective of where I'm at, right? So typically I want to mark my territory by putting my feet out and taking the picture of the view. In my mind, my whole life I spent looking at myself in the mirror, training and sculpting and defining. And I ate alone. I traveled alone. I lived a very nomadic lifestyle. I didn't have close friends because all those appearances I'm making, I'm going to meet strangers. And I'm there for such a short time, I'm not making friends. I'm not even making memories because we didn't have like the telephones with the picture on it. Like I didn't travel with a camera. All these places throughout the 90s in the world that I went, I didn't document any of it. And now I try to document it from my perspective. So when I look at my camera, I see what I'm supposed to be seeing. I'm not fucking trying to be in the picture. And if I'm at the beach or I'm at a resort, I'm not trying to take a picture to see if I have abs. I'm not going through a body transformation. I am so watered down with looking at myself that a lot of times I take a shower in the dark. I don't need any light. I don't want to see my body. And it's because I'm not spending any time working on it. Like that's not who I am. It's not what I am. And I found it very ironic. You remember Cal Scalek? Cal Scalek was the guy that did the famous like Jesus pose in the 70s at the Olympia. Like he got crucified. I ran into him at a funeral of a mutual friend with John Brown who introduced me to bodybuilding. I said, Cal, let's take a picture together. He says, no. I said, why? He's like, I don't want people to see how skinny I am. I go, you're a cyclist. Nobody gives a shit. He's like, yeah, but they're just going to judge me. So the bodybuilder is constantly aware that he's always being judged on who he was. And for me, I don't give a shit. And I think that's where my balance comes from. I work out a little bit. I like to work out because I like to eat. I'm a foodaholic. I'd be 300 pounds if I didn't go to the gym. But when I go to the gym, I'm not really trying to do anything with my body other than move the fat and move the calories, break a little bit of sweat, increase my metabolism. Because I know that calories in and no calories out, you're just going to get fat. So I try to do a little bit of exercise. But my exercise for me that's therapeutic is riding a bike or walking. And when I say walking, I'm not walking on a treadmill. I'm walking outside. I'm seeing shit. I'm doing things outside of the gym. But most bodybuilders can't find that balance.
They can't, and I think you're right because there's very few I can think of that are
very few. In fact, I think Shawn's probably one of the only ones I've talked to that I think that has that kind of a perspective on himself.
Well, just a healthy, not just healthy physically, but mentally and still in the sport. And what I mean by that is like there's you, Labrada, Gaspari. I can't think of a whole lot of other guys who are still in the business of it, but are healthy and feel mentally healthy and emotionally healthy.
I think it comes from the passion. I think people start bodybuilding for different reasons. I mean, there's people that start because they want to make money. They want to be famous. They want to be in a magazine or they want to prove something to their dad or their brother or their girlfriend. And they're on a mission. I fell in love with it. I became passionate about it. I'm a historian. Like I could sit here and rattle off dates and places.
You're an artist. You can paint a canvas and put the brush down every once in a while.
But that comes with passion because, there was a lot of stuff I did for free. A lot of stuff that I would travel for free to put me in a position of opportunity to do other things, which is why now I have the Shawn Ray Classic over in Hawaii. I was brought there in 1988 by Dot and Mitz Kawashima. They died already. But I went back for a competition to MC it, and I saw the dilapidation of the bodybuilding industry. The show was starting late. The trophies were shit, and the promoter didn't give a crap, and tried to rush everybody out. And I said, something's got to be done here. And I came back and I told Jim Mannion about it, and he created an opportunity for me to have a show. And last year I had the biggest show in 25 years. First time. I live in California. That's a 6-hour flight to Hawaii. But who doesn't want to go to Hawaii? So my passion is like, wow, I love the beach. I love the surf. I love the pools. I love Hawaii. Next thing you know, I got the biggest show in Hawaii in 25 years because I put all of my passion into it. And now I've got a second show in Maui in 2019 in March that I'm able to do. So now I've got 2 shows that will help the islanders. Some of those people never got off the island. I went over there and I gave away a free trip to the Mr. Olympia weekend. I took the national trophies that you get for winning the nationals or the USAs. I brought those fuckers over there so those athletes could win something tangible.
Yeah.
Some of those guys will never leave Hawaii, right? It's not like it's another country, but it's very expensive to live there and some of them don't travel. So all they have are these Hawaiian shows. So I brought those trophies. This watch I'm wearing, I got the sponsor, Swole O'Clock watch. They're giving 6 of these away to my 6 overall champions.
What's it called? Swole O'Clock?
It's called Swole O'Clock.
That's awesome.
It's heavy too. Pass it around.
Yeah.
So I went over there. I got my sponsors. I got
damn, it is
Leo
heavy.
Michi luxury line clothing. They're giving away clothing to the winners. I've got Gripped headphones, Grip Fitness Audio. They're giving away headphones to my overall champions. So these guys are getting stuff that they never thought possible. And to top it off, I've got 3 of the 6 overall champions. They're going to go all expenses paid to China to compete in an IFBB Pro qualifier. So if you're living in Hawaii and you want to compete, you have a chance to go to China and get a pro card. And are you familiar with Hidetada Yamagishi?
Yeah.
He's got his first Pro-Am competition taking place in Japan November 19th.
Oh.
Next year, 3 of my winners from Maui will have a chance to go over to that show and do that. So I'm doing a lot of bartering with other promoters to be creative out there on those islands.
Very cool.
Who benefits? This is shit that I'm giving back that when I'm gone can be paid forward, right? I mean, I want people to say, kind of like watching what Arnold's doing with his show, I want people to say that, I came over there and I did it. I did the thing and I did it right.
That's a great example. You used Arnold because Arnold, he still pays homage to his bodybuilding roots, even though the guy, obviously.
What is it about the Arnold Classic that I think a lot of bodybuilders and even like strongman competitors like that they say like that's the. I mean, I feel like it's almost getting more prestige than Olympia. Do you?
Well, it is because it's more inclusive. Listen, you can go to the Arnold Classic to watch a bikini competition and see some guy in one of the side rooms shooting archery. They have a cheerleading competition. They have a children's fair. There's a 5K run. There's the arm wrestling championships. I mean, there's an art competition taking place. It just brought It's bigger than the Olympics. The Olympics doesn't have 22,000 athletes. So it's not just Arnold. It's his army of people working, most of which are volunteers. The Lorimer, Jim and Bob Lorimer and Kathleen Lorimer, these guys, they're all bringing everything together under this one roof. And this happened in 1975 when the Mr. Olympia was held in Columbus. Arnold said, when I'm done, Jim, I want to come back and work with you. I want to do something with you. And then in 1989, they had the first one. And ironically, in 2012, I did the first and only documentary on the Arnold Classic, the 25-year anniversary. So I had a chance to get the history of how their relationship happened. It was a handshake agreement. There's nothing in writing right now.
Oh, wow.
That thing brings in $40 million to the economy. Wow. Think about it. When you have 200,000 people coming to Columbus, it impacts the hotels. It impacts the airlines. It impacts the food industry. I mean, that is a machine. And it's like that buses. I mean, a lot of that shit's done on volunteer. People just want to attach themselves to something great.
So Arnold and him, just a handshake?
It's a handshake, and that's nothing in writing. And now Bob Lorimer is helping, and now it's globalized. It's in Brazil. It's over in Spain. Right. They had one in China. They had one in South Africa. So, I mean, what Arnold did, I mean, nobody can really replicate it because it's Arnold, is he took his passion and he turned it into something that how many people have benefited from that? Listen, I mean, Flex Wheeler won 4 Arnold Classic titles, and Dexter Jackson's won 9 when you start counting Australia and South Africa. It's created careers. Now those 9 championships, $100,000 plus. Flex Wheeler, $400,000 in those 4 wins. It was enough to buy his house. Branch Warren's got a couple. Kai Green's got a few. I mean, that Arnold Classic is more important, I think, to the bodybuilder because it's not coming from Joe Weider, it's coming from another bodybuilder.
Right. Now, is the judging different because of that?
You got this. You pretty much have the same judges, and you almost have the same athletes, with the exception of Mr. Olympia. I mean, Ronnie Coleman is the only. Ronnie and Dexter were the only 2 to win the Arnold and the Olympia.
Yeah, because it's kind of an unsaid rule, not rule, but agreement that the crowned Mr. Olympia doesn't compete in the Classic.
Part of the reason that is because once you win that title, it's hard to go back into that lion's den and train. When you have that title, you have all these opportunities to make appearances. You can make more appearances between the Olympia and the Arnold Classic than they pay you prize money.
Oh, right.
Oh, wow.
So you have these responsibilities like becoming Miss America, and you got to go make all these appearances. When are you going to find time to train?
Sure.
Right after you won the Olympia. I mean, for me, Ronnie did it in 2001. That was the year I retired. He won the Arnold in 2001, and he came back around and he won the Mr. Olympia in 2001. And that's when I decided I don't want to be around for the Ronnie Coleman retirement party. But it's a very tough run from the Olympia to the Arnold. So I give my hats off to Dexter Jackson because he did it routinely. And Flex never did master that, did he? He won the Arnold, but that Olympia, he just never showed up right. You run out of gas by the time that Olympia comes around when your weight's going up and down and you're not doing something you love.
Yeah, yeah.
Flex had all that success doing something he didn't really like, not love. If he had loved what he did, he would have been Mr. Olympia.
I think a lot of people agree, with that. Maybe even him, So what is your main business now? Is it promoting?
We're talking about the Shawn TVT. Talk about the TV.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit of everything now. So I worked with Joe Weider at Muscle Fitness and Steve Bleckman and Robert Kennedy, even John Balick. I mean, so many people are dying, right? Like it's almost like that the passing of the torch is going on. I'm really concerned about people having an attachment to the history. Like when something happened in the industry, I used to be able to pick up the phone and go, Joe, what the hell's going on? And he could tell me the truth. And Peter McGough, who wrote for a long time, somebody said Bertil Fox, who used to be a great bodybuilder, that he died. He's in prison right now doing a double life sentence.
Yeah, he killed somebody.
So how do you get verification? You got where do you go to get the facts? Who do you call, right? So by me being mobile and being involved with the upcoming athletes and being associated with the former athletes, it's kind of I'm everything to everybody right now. But with the Shawn Ray TV, I don't have to be waiting on a check from Muscular Development or Generation Iron to send me somewhere to get content. Now I could find my own sponsors that can send me places and I can gather my own content. I have different interests. Like I want to have my Where Are They Now segment on my Shawn Ray TV where I'm sitting down with some of the people that helped start this industry, sitting across from Ronnie Coleman or from Lee Haney, or finding out what their family's like. Lee Haney's he's about to become a grandfather.
Oh, wow.
And I want to be sitting there in his living room with his 8 standout trophies and see his wife that he married from elementary school and his 2 kids. He brought Josh on stage and he brought Olympia. He named his daughter Olympia. She's a full-grown woman now. And where are they now? What are they doing, right? So I want to bring that kind of thing back. And then there's kind of like the Robin Leach lifestyles of the rich and famous, right? So I want to see what's the fruit of their labor. Lee Haney's got a great story. He won one of the Mr. Olympias. He asked Joe Weider, what do I do with this money? And Joe said, buy land. So he was in Atlanta and he went out and he bought just a patch of dirt. It was like $60,000. He put it down and just left it. Some 15 or 20 years later, the airport, Hartsfield Airport in Atlanta, wanted to buy this land because they're expanding the freaking airport because it's such a major hub. And he sold it for $2 million.
Oh, wow. Great.
He took that $2 million and he bought a strip mall and he put in there, they got Starbucks, Verizon, Subway, legitimate tenants. And he bought his house off of one of his Olympia checks some 25, 30 years ago for like $600,000, which is like $2 million now. Hearing those stories gives the bodybuilders coming up behind them a little bit of perspective on what's possible.
Now, is that more common or less common? Like, what do you see? Like, knowing everybody, is there more guys that have actually taken that and done great things and are financially set, or is there more guys that are struggling financially?
Yeah, it's like any other sport. Isn't it amazing? You watch these basketball players sign a $100 million deal and they're broke like in 10 years.
It's true. They don't know how to manage it. Yeah.
So there's really no story on how to do it, or there's nobody even showing an example of what can be done. But when I sit across from somebody like Lee Haney, I'm absorbing that shit and I'm telling that story to other people so they hear it. I want to capture that from the source, right? Mm-hmm. I did it on my radio show when I was with Muscular Development, but I'm going to be traveling around with Shawn Ray TV, getting those little nuggets. And also the other side, Craig sits in a jail for, murdering the assistant out in the desert, fire in the desert. He burned his assistant. You remember that, Craig Titus?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
with his girlfriend, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
With
him and his girlfriend.
Him and his wife.
His wife.
They killed his girlfriend.
That's right.
And I got my fingerprints on that because when Craig came to Vegas, I picked him up at the airport and he guest posed and I showed him where to buy his house. The next thing you know, he moves out there. I didn't know he was going to become a killer. But what's he doing now? I want to try to get that story, because that story's not going to get told unless somebody that's close to it goes and seeks it out.
I didn't even know that.
Oh yeah, Craig and Bertil Fox are the 2 bodybuilders that are in jail for murder.
Yeah, so 97, Bertil Fox flew me out there to do his grand opening at his gym in his homeland, St. Kitts, out in the islands. His girlfriend picked me up, Leoka. Actually, that was his ex-girlfriend at the time, but they were friends. She was like 21, 20 years old. And a year later, he comes back from England. She'd moved on, had a boyfriend, had a relationship, and he came in and he shot her. What? In her mom's shop. And since the mom probably made a hissy fit about it, he shot her too in the face. And then he waited for the cops to come. And he was facing hanging, I guess, because it's governed by either the English or the French or something like that. But he wound up getting a double life sentence, and he's sitting behind bars. But the irony of that is I was there like 8 or 9 months before it actually happened.
Holy shit.
Damn. So
his nickname was Brutal Bertil Fox, too. Brutal.
And he's one of those head cases that he didn't drive. He had the anger management, testosterone thing going on. Very low self-esteem. Great bodybuilder. Got 5th in the 83 Mr. Olympia and was never the same. It was like Mike Mincer. it crushed him. Defeat crushed him, and it changed who he was as an athlete because he thought he should have won.
Yeah, I learned about him reading the original Arnold Schwarzenegger Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding. Bertel was in there doing like shoulder workouts and stuff.
So you can imagine, I was 17 years old when I walked into World's Gym and saw him working out. Mind you, that's the year he got third.
And he trained very uniquely, right? Real loose with his form. And
like Ronnie Coleman.
He
was a strong bodybuilder. Kind of blocky, though, when it came down to the legs.
Yeah.
But at 17-year-old, I'm watching him in his prime. And then in 97, I'm at his gym opening, and then he's in jail for murder.
That's crazy.
I'm attached to a lot of these stories and these people, and I want to bring those stories out. Where are they now? Good, bad, or ugly, it doesn't really matter. Guys and girls.
Can I make a request now? Because I also am a fan, especially of the old school, bodybuilding, whatever. I would love to see some stories on how they trained and the equipment that they used. I love looking at pictures of old gyms and seeing the type of equipment that they had and how the benches were constructed and the type of workouts they did and if they trained any differently or what their diets were like.
Well, I don't know how old you think I am, but I'm not going to – there's not a lot of bodybuilders I know with the black and white photos. But
even if you go back to the 70s and 80s, it's cool,
Yeah, but you got to realize that those athletes didn't own the pictures, right?
Yeah,
so they posed for pictures, and those pictures were probably in someone's studio or at someone else's gym. Sure. I'll be with Frank Zane in San Diego in 2 weeks at the Fit Expo. I host the seminars at all the Fit Expos. There's one in Anaheim. There's one in LA. We got the one in San Diego, Florida, and Chicago. And it's a panel of distinguished guests. Typically, they're either still competing or they're retired. And I do a Q&A with them in the audience. And Frank Zane's going to be out at that one, and I'll be able to ask him a few things. And this is another nugget because from that, I'll be able to get some exclusive sit-down interviews with these guys. That's why I thought Shawn Ray TV, which is basically a glorified YouTube channel, will be a place that I can just put this content rather than giving it to a company that might dispose of me or may not need me, or they say, who's Frank Zane?
You get creative freedom.
Yeah, I got creative freedom. And then I can also, go behind the scenes at the shows. I can also grab instantaneous content. These phones, they have like the 1080i, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, they're crystal clear. And if I'm sitting, like last year I was backstage and I left my phone in the recording area where we were doing the play-by-play. And I walked outside. I walk right into The Rock, right? Dwayne, he's standing there by himself, just kind of waiting for his time to come on stage. And we had this long conversation about the Shawn Ray Classic in Hawaii and this, that, and the other, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking to myself, if I had my phone, I could have captured some of that stuff, right? Some of these nuggets, because he's with $7 Productions, and they were producing this thing. But I had this moment where if I had my camera, I could have captured that candid moment on film. And in the past, who's thinking that way? So now I've got this producer's hat on.
Yeah.
I'll be able to get some candid behind the scenes stuff. And who doesn't want to see, Labrada at home with his kids? He's got 3 boys, still got the Labrada nutrition. And one of them, Hunter's about to go pro.
Oh, wow. I didn't know his son competes.
He's big. Yeah, he's a big guy. He's like 250 pounds.
Oh, shit.
He's better than Lee because he's a bigger version. And of course, we saw what happened with Sergio Oliva Jr. He wound up competing in the Mr. Olympia after his dad. And these aren't all feel-good stories. There's a lot of bodybuilders, man, that aren't doing well. And we need to find out why. And maybe they can help teach some of these guys some of the things not to do.
It also humanizes them. I think it's good to do. If you're trying to grow the sport, it's good to humanize the athletes and so people see that they're real people.
Yeah, and with me, the whole Shawn Ray TV thing is an extension of my passion, just to document some stuff along the way. Like I'm not trying to look for likes or follows. If it comes, it comes. But I want to have a place where people can go and find a little bit more meat because we don't have the magazines anymore. If I went to go get a magazine, I knew probably who was going to be in it, and I could find certain features that I can relate to. But now we don't have that outlet.
There's not very many good bodybuilding YouTube channels either right now.
Well, there's a lot that talk shit,
Yeah.
A lot of them that don't really give you information but give a lot of opinion. Some, like this, will give an athlete a voice to kind of give you a feel for who they are and what they're doing. But on an educational sense, there's really nothing out there.
There's not much there at all. I wanted to ask you a couple things, and I'd be mad if I didn't. One, do you think that with your experience, do you have the ability, you think, to look at somebody and almost be certain if they're anabolically enhanced or not?
That's a tough call because I was accused of being on drugs long before I actually got involved with them because I was a genetic anomaly. Like, there's no way you're 18 years old. I mean, when I would be on the stage and I would win the competition, John Brown, he's notorious for telling the story that people were laughing at the LA championships because I was a teenager competing against men. I got third that year, and they didn't believe I was a teenager. So there's certain people you can see that just have that it factor. But then again, you start having to factor in like where's the desire and the mental side. Sometimes when you're gifted, you don't feel like you have to work hard, and so it doesn't turn. Rory Littlemeyer, Matt Mendenhall, they have all the tools, and they can't get over the hump because mental or whatever. You can see potential, but you can't guarantee success.
Right.
That's a different thing. But when you look at somebody who's vascular or lean, yeah, I don't even give a shit. Like it's like the last thing I'm going to think is like, are you on steroids? I never looked at someone and go, are you on shit? I mean,
right. Well, I know you did that with Mike O'Hearn. Like, what?
Yeah.
Do you believe he's full of shit?
No, of course Mike knows I believe he's full of shit. That's why he was sweating so bad. Did you see him sweat?
Yes.
He should have never wore a gray shirt. If you're gonna lie, wear black. It wasn't hot in that room. I had him in the hot seat though.
You did.
So I think people are more inclined to believe what they see rather than what they hear. Like I was adamantly telling people I was natural when I failed the drug test at the Arnold because I was as natural as I could be at the time. 3 months natural was natural.
Right.
But I failed the test and I couldn't argue because I had taken what I tested positive for. Now, if you're talking to me while I'm sitting here, I'm telling you I'm natural, but that doesn't negate the years of when I was using it. So when I had Mike in the hot seat, he might have been natural during that conversation. Right. And in his mind, he's justifying, yeah, I'm natural. But you know what? What sounds better? For me to sit here and deny and then get people talking? I mean, what do we see with Lance Armstrong? What do we hear from Jose Canseco? What do we see with freaking Mark McGuire? I mean, did anybody own up to it?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm the only one.
Yeah.
I'm the only one because it wasn't really documented. There was only 2,000 people there to witness my victory, and they heard about the drug test 4 or 5 months later in a magazine, so I didn't suffer a consequence. But they did get rid of the drug testing because they realized that there's no way they can continue down this road as all these bodybuilders were falling victim of a drug test. So what do we want? We want to clean up the sport or just let the bodybuilders do what they will? And they made the right choice because if they had stayed that route, of course, Lee Haney would probably not have won in 1991. Sure. It served him well because he cleaned out for a year, and then when he got back on his shit, he looked like freaking Superman.
Yeah, I think the smartest thing would be just to adjust the criteria of judging so you can direct people to not go crazy.
You can't even do that, man. Yeah. You can't. If you got a car, you got a Porsche, and you got a Corvette, and I got a Ferrari, and he's got a Volkswagen. Who runs the greater risk of freaking crashing? He's probably the least at risk. He's got a Volkswagen.
Sure.
But dude, no one's going to tell us how fast to drive. We know the speed limit. We all do. Mm-hmm. Who's going to tell you when to step on the gas and when not to? You're going to test that sucker when you get on that open road to Palm Springs. You can't tell. I mean, it's just begging you to do it, right? The highway's wide open. There's no cars in either direction. Fuck it, I'm gone.
Yeah. Well, didn't they try a little bit with all the diuretic use in the 90s? And
the diuretics were killing people.
That was that. You saw people die, cramping up on stage. Dillette was carried off stage.
Mohammed Benaziz had died because of diuretics in 92. And that's when they switched from the anabolics in 1990 and said, screw that. The bigger problem is this diuretic stuff. And they tested from 92 to 2001. And, of course, that's when Jay Cutler got second in the Mr. Olympia. It was my last Olympia. Mm. And when he failed the test and they did nothing about it, that kind of sealed my fate in terms of deciding to retire. Because I failed the test and I got the money taken off of me and the title stripped. And
I didn't know that. So he failed and they left him alone.
He threatened a lawsuit. He threatened to sue. And the story goes that they left the samples between the prejudging and finals in an unsecured area so that he could have actually proved that anybody could have tampered with this.
Wow.
There was no protocol. Like we all pissed in a cup, and after prejudging, they were kind of left over there on the side. Sorry, and that was a known fact. So he had a case that he could have brought a suit that the protocols of the collection of the samples could have been tampered with. And nobody did anything.
You never got your money back?
Well, he got second. I wound up in fourth place that year. He got second, and if he had got knocked out, I would have been bumped up to third in my final Olympia. And to make matters worse, we all have to sign a contract to compete in the Mr. Olympia. And if you don't, you can't compete. And Kevin Lavrone never signed his contract, and I knew about that. And they allowed him in anyways, and he showed up late for the athletes' meeting. He was threatened with a fine and a suspension. They just kept making all these latitudes for Kevin. And, of course, Kevin got third in the Olympia, and I was fourth. So, the truth be told, Kevin would have been out, so he wouldn't have even been there. Jay would have failed the test.
You would have got
01,
second.
I would have got second place, and I would have told everybody to kiss my ass anyway because I was done. I was spent. A bodybuilder has to know when to go.
Yeah.
And for me, it was no longer fun. I wasn't passionate about the contest prep. I knew there had to be more to life than just chicken and rice and eat, sleeping, and training. Mind you, I was on this grind from 17 to 36, and it was year in and it was year out.
It's a long time.
And it just, I'm like, okay, I could probably do this for another 4 years, but then what am I going to miss? I'm missing my nieces and nephews growing up. My friends are getting married. The kids are coming along. I mean, I got a house in freaking Yorba Linda, a condo in Las Vegas, and a condo in Newport Beach, 3 bikes and 2 cars. I'm never home. I'm coming home to a dog. There's got to be more to it. And that hits you like a wave, man. It's like, psh, what are you going to do? And so it's like, I told Joe, I said, you know what? I just, it's not my passion right now. I need to take a year off. Because I hadn't taken a year off in 12 consecutive Olympias. And he said, okay, take a year off. I said, the only Mr. Olympia press conference that was recorded and documented was the 2001, because I was just calling the judges out. And he saw my venom about transparency in scoring, prize money for all the athletes, the judges, the criteria. I was letting it all go at that press conference. So he knew that I was like at a boiling point. And I pretty much asked him for a year off. In 2002, I took that year off. That's when I got engaged. And then in 2003, I got married, and I tried to buy myself more time, saying, hey, Joe, I'm getting married. I don't know if I could do this year's Mr. Olympia. I'm trying to keep the check coming. I don't know if I can do that. Oh, you should get married. Yeah. So he was all about me trying to find my quan, my happiness, my quiet spot. And then he sold the company to AMI in 2004. And I met with a supplement company called Biotech, and they offered me an opportunity that pretty much was doubling what I was getting from Joe, and I never looked back at the stage because I was preparing for life after.
Smart.
So getting married in 2003, the Weeders selling their company in 2004, me signing on with Biotech Nutrition. I had my kid in 2005, and I never looked back with a desire to pose, and I never posed again on a bodybuilding stage after 2002.
Wow. You have son or daughter?
I got 3 girls.
3 girls.
Yeah,
Wow.
so
Good for you, man.
Yeah.
Got a 10-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a surprise 36-year-old.
Oh, what do you mean a surprise?
Surprise!
What do you mean surprise?
Ancestry.com.
What?
No
A
way.
year ago revealed.
Just a
that-
year?
A year ago. A year and a half now.
Wait, did you go on there or did they find you?
I'm sitting there watching the football game, man. I get a message from my cousin.
Hey, Dad.
No, my cousin's not my dad. I'm not from Alabama. My mom's youngest brother's daughter was on Ancestry.com looking for my mom's brother's dad. They have 2 different dads. And I guess when my daughter went on Ancestry.com, they became a DNA match. And they started communicating with each other. While that was happening, my cousin contacts me because we speak, and she says, hey, there's a girl on here saying that you might be her dad.
Get the fuck out
I
of
said,
here.
give me her name and her number. And I called her right away, and I just started just investigating. And she found her mom. And her mom was my next door neighbor, 1 house away from where I was born and grew up. I was born and grew up in the same house. 1 house away was her mom, who told her that I'm one of possibly 3 guys, that she had her, but she didn't know who the dad was.
What?
Whoa.
And I said, okay, so she gave me her mom's name, told me where her mom was from, the timeline, everything fell into place. So I'm taking this like, okay, let me talk to my mom. Let me talk to my
Wait a
sister.
second. How old are you?
Dude, this is last year.
No. How old are you? When...
I was 15. I was a sophomore in high school.
Whoa.
I got started early. When you're good at sports, you become a target. Well, I don't know. It was a one-time thing. Trust me, I don't remember it that well.
One of my buddies call those cleat chasers. That's what
Yeah, it was definitely cleat chasers because I was coming home from football and I climbed the balcony after football practice. But it was a forgettable experience for me. But her mom,
Not so much for her.
her mom remembered. Now, mind you,
Wow.
she's 35 at the time, and she's got a master's degree. Right around the corner. She's from over there near Oakland, Fremont or something like that.
Yeah.
And so she's got 3 kids, married, 3 kids. So I have grandchildren. Hello,
Grandpa.
Get the fuck outta here.
2 boys and a girl.
Have you met her in
No,
person?
oh yeah, but, I mean we're family now. She calls me dad, and the kids call me Papa
shit.
Shawn. So when I got her on the phone, and we went down and had the DNA test together, 99.99% that I am the dad. So it was confirmed. 2 weeks later, a week later, I flew up here to San Francisco, and I spent the whole day getting acclimated to everybody. It was almost seamless in terms of the embracing of it all. And then a month later, she came down, met my mom, my sister, my wife, my kids, and everybody kind of like was all right. My wife still's got the poker face. She's like, I go, relax. You were 9 years old when this happened, and I didn't know that this happened. But nonetheless, it could have been a whole lot worse, because if I had found out 20 years ago, it could have changed the course of my entire my whole existence. But her parents moved back up to Utah. Her adoptive parents. She was adopted 6 days after she was given up for adoption.
Oh wow!
And she was given up for adoption because her parents. I think she's got the story from her parents, her grandparents. The whole black-white thing wasn't working in '81, and they were Mormon. And so giving her up for adoption was the best opportunity for her to have a good life. So her adoptive parents, they also raised 2 other adopted kids and had 2 of their own. And when they moved back to Utah, she stayed in Northern California with her grandparents, adoptive grandparents. When they both died, that's when she went on Ancestry.com to find out who she is. She found her mother first, who's not receptive to anything. Her mom pretty much acknowledged, yeah, I'm your mom, but have a good life.
Sure.
She has 7 other kids.
Whoa.
And I'm sure that would open a whole can of wax if she went over and integrated herself into a family that's not receptive.
Right.
Mine opened their hands, and she's part of the family. She just moved in September, about a half an hour away from where I'm at, so we'll be able to grow up together.
Wow.
And have a whole. I was flying
What
back
a
and forth.
trip.
When you first saw her, I mean, do you see the resemblance right away? Like, how,
You know, it's a strange occurrence because she's mulatto. Her mom had red hair and blue eyes, so she's mixed, and I'm part Puerto Rican, so I'm trying to see me in her. And as I start to spend more time with her, I see some things
like mannerisms
Yeah,
and maybe attitude and things like that.
Yeah, and facial expressions. I mean, it's a weird fucking feeling, dude.
I bet it is.
I'm looking at this full-grown woman going, what?
Yeah.
How? Who? But she's so cool. It's the other side of the pillow. We talk, we text. I mean, my youngest daughter's in love with her. Like they talk all
Big
the time.
sister.
My middle daughter's still got the poker face like mom. I can imagine. I'm trying to figure out what they're thinking. Right?
Oh, yeah,
I can't put myself in their shoes, but I do know that in my shoes, life is too short, and that's my blood. And I'm gonna embrace her the same way that I embrace it.
no.
I mean, listen, the love
cool
I
is
had
that?
from before I met my wife, my dog was my everything. My dog, right, from the cradle to the grave. And now my kids come along. It's a whole different type of love. And now that I've got this full-grown, ready-made family, all I can do is be available. I can't raise her; she's grown.
Right.
They just purchased their second house. I mean, everything's functional about this situation that I'm in. Now you ready for the other shoe to drop?
Oh, shit.
2 weeks later, my daughter connects with another girl, and it's my brother Chuck's daughter. My brother's 1 year older than me, and the exact thing I just went through, my brother went through.
He didn't know he had a kid.
1986.
Was he an athlete too, or what?
My
Is this
brother
girl
was a
across the street
college
or
football
what?
player. College football player at University of Reno, Nevada.
Oh my God.
She starts talking to my daughter. She says, "Hey, I found my dad, and maybe ask your mom if she knows anybody by the name of Chuck Ray." And the mom's like, "Yep." Now the mom's floored because she thinks that this daughter of hers belongs to her ex-boyfriend or ex-husband or whatever it was. The mom is blindsided. She doesn't know that one night stand was my brother's kid. And my brother's laughing at me for a little bit, had a nice little fun time until I said, "Hey, Chuck, I got a lady on the phone that says in 1986, you were across the hall from her and you guys actually had a 2-time hookup." Now, my brother can't remember yesterday. So here he's talking to this lady and he does the DNA test and it's 99.99.
Oh, wow.
Shit.
He has 3 grandsons.
Oh my God.
Ancestry.com.
So you can imagine my dad passed away in 2010, but my mom's going, "What the hell?
Yeah, she became a
What's
great
going
grandma
on?
overnight.
What in the hell were you guys up to?"
We just grew.
That's hilarious. So if with your kids, you got your girls, the younger ones. If either one of them ever want to get into a stage presentation sport like bikini
Well, I got
or
a daughter.
figure,
I have a daughter that's an actor, dancer, and a singer. If you don't know
Similar.
her, Google her. Asia Monet Ray. She just dropped a new song, a new music CD. She was the daughter of O.J. Simpson on O.J. Simpson versus State of California.
Oh wow.
She was on Dance Moms.
Oh, there you go.
She had her own show, her own reality show called Raising Asia. She's been on Grey's Anatomy. She's got like 1.4 million followers on Instagram. I mean, how's that possible? You're 13. You got 1.4 million followers on Instagram.
Wow.
Man.
She got 330 some odd.
Well, fuck, we should have
followers.
interviewed her. She's
Yeah.
bigger than Dad.
She is. I'm known as Asia's dad. She's got like 330 subscribers on YouTube. I'm over here struggling to get like 5,000.
Wow.
But she's killing the game right now in terms of being a triple threat actor, dancer, and singer. She sang with Mariah Carey last year during a Christmas
That's
special.
impressive. Wow.
I competed at the Beacon Theater the Night of Champions. She's over there singing with Mariah Carey.
What? That's crazy.
I take her to the American Idol because I'm friends with Harry Connick Jr. The next thing I know, she's on Harry Connick Jr. singing songs, and having
great.
fun. So she's doing the thing. My youngest daughter, Bella, is more shy and more conservative. She's a gymnast, and she horseback rides. She's just being a normal kid. But this one in the business, Asia, she's 13 going on 30, sending me pictures with Jamie Foxx going, Dad, do you recognize this guy? Hey, do you know this guy? It's Quincy Jones. I'm like, what the heck? Yeah. Viola Davis. I mean, she's in that space.
Wow.
And it's a fun ride because I'm watching it happen, and she doesn't know like the resume of some of the people she's in and around.
Yeah.
Right.
But she's definitely has that it factor.
Are you really protective of her in that whole space?
Mom's doing all that. She's not a Hollywood kid by any means. We're from Orange County, but mom is at all the auditions and dotting the T's and crossing the I's. She's the momager. But she is moving with some heavy hitters, and her star is on the rise. She's gonna put herself in a position where she's gonna be fine. It's the younger one. I got to make sure she finds her passion and has that normalcy, because Asia's homeschooled, 4.0 student, being homeschooled for the past 6 years.
Wow.
But she is an overachiever. She was like a national dance champion at the age of 5. She went on a TV show called Ultimate Dance Competition with a bunch of 13-year-olds, and she made the top 3. That's how she wound up on Dance Moms, and then Raising Asia came after that. And then she started doing her music. She's got music videos on there with 2 and 3 million hits. And so she's doing it without any I support it. I try to be a fan of it, because if I get
rocket ship,
if I get in there, she's a girl. I get in there, I have different opinions than mom, and I don't want to have that argument. So I let mom manage that.
Yeah. Good deal, proud dad.
Yeah, it's good. It's fun to watch. That takes me away from the whole bodybuilding thing. See, so
that's cool.
I have that balance. Some bodybuilders, they don't transfer to anything. I've transferred into a gymnastics dad, and I'm over here, I got a new family with grandkids I got to deal with. So I got a whole lot more on my plate than going to the gym today.
Wow, that's awesome.
It's fun though.
Something else I wanted to ask you, going back to the bodybuilding conversation. How much do you know about the Kai Green story and the not competing in Olympia anymore?
I know a lot about it, man.
So,
when I told you I'm an idiot savant, like the
I
Rain
know
Man.
you are, dude. So enlighten me a little bit.
Well, 2007 or 2006, Kai Green was dead last in the Shawn Ray Classic that Phil won. You talk about opposite ends of the spectrum, right? Phil's star shoots right up in 2006 because he wins right out of the gate and goes to New York and wins. Kai Green's at the back of the pack and has like $2 in his pocket. I had a $10,000 Best Poser award that Kai won that day. Oh. And that's what was able to keep him in the game. A year later, he comes back and he wins the show. He wins the $25,000 and the $10,000 Best Poser award. Not a bad year for Kai Green.
Sure.
Then he goes back home and wins the New York show just like Phil did the year before, and that's where that rivalry began. He went on to win the Arnold Classic, and he got a couple second places to fill in the Mr. Olympia, and Kai phenomena kind of took off. I think somewhere along the way, Kai realized that, Weider AMI did not renew his contract, and yet Phil was with Weider AMI when he got second. So Phil, if you think about it, Phil is contracted by the company putting the Mr. Olympia on, and I'm second, and I don't have a contract anymore. I got to believe that he's going to win the contest. Why am I going to do it? So let me go do these Arnold Classics. And he goes and changes focus, and he's winning over in Brazil, and he's winning over in Australia. And somebody got in his ear, I believe, and said, look, you know what? If they're not going to pay you to compete in the show the way they pay Phil, don't do it. Don't give him the satisfaction of giving you second place again. I think it was a bad move.
Oh, really?
Well, you're a competitor. You compete first, and everything else follows. We don't know who he is. We take him out of that Olympia lineup. He's not as established as he is because he's competing against lesser caliber athletes. In shows, he should win. You got to compete against the best if you want to be the best.
Right. So, wasn't there also another league that was trying to start at the same time too?
Yeah, but it wasn't rivaling the Olympia.
Yeah,
it wasn't a Mr. Olympia league. It was just some federation that wanted to use Kai. Another disgruntled promoter that fell out of good graces of the IFBB was trying to snatch Kai over and use him as a figurehead. But Kai got some bad advice because then he made it easy for Phil. Kai was chomping at the bit, and he was in his prime and hungry, and then by principle chose to sit out. Well, that's cool the first year, but the second year you got to get back in the game because clearly you're the number 2 bodybuilder on paper, but everyone's dream is to be Mr. Olympia. I mean, that's the only reason I lifted weights. Is this about money? I mean, I never competed for the money. I mean, the bodybuilding platform is how I was making money, but the dream of chasing the Mr. Olympia title was always the number 1 focus. And when I saw him do that, I thought, all right, his focus is not there. This is more about the manager and and politics and the bullshit, and you can't win a contest as big as the Olympia when you're thinking, hey, I need a free booth for my supplement company and I need to be contracted by you like that other guy is. Like, I didn't know how much money Lee Haney or Dorian Yates or Ronnie was getting from Weider. I didn't care. I only cared about what I was doing. And if I wasn't contracted by Joe at the time, that title would have given me validation to up my appearance fees. So somewhere along the way, it turned into a business decision for Kai to sit out and then actually become a protester of the Olympia, because in his mind, he's realizing they're not going to let me win. He gave in to like, it's Phil's contest because he's a Weider guy. I'm not a Weider guy, so let him have it. And now
he would have won this last one.
Most definitely. Yeah. Because, and he still looks like he hasn't really stopped doing the business. You know what I mean? He looks like he's still in the game. But if I'm him watching what happened, I'm getting ready for this next Mr. Olympia.
Absolutely.
Because he can beat Shawn Ray.
Yeah.
And now Phil, on the, like every Mr. Olympia, they get worse as time goes on. And even though Kai's older, we don't know what kind of ailments Kai's dealing with. I mean, when you take time off, things start to fall apart. He could be hurt. I don't know. But if he's not, he should be getting ready to come back. It's almost like, what was that movie, the black film that they just made, and the guy came home to get get his crown. You guys don't watch black movies? It's the biggest fucking movie of the year last year. The biggest movie of the year.
Last year?
Take color out of it. Remember the African guy? I can't believe I'm drawing a blank.
I'm drawing a blank. I'm a movie guy.
There's only one black movie.
I just keep
with the exception of Coming to America 30 years ago.
I just keep thinking of Get Out. That's the only movie I can.
Yeah, that was a great movie. The black guys all die in that movie. This is a feel good black film, kind of like on like Disney type, where the guy goes home. He's like Black Panther. Come on, man.
Black Panther? Oh, yeah.
You should have said super.
But remember the guy?
Marvel film.
All right, it's horrible. Come on, that was the biggest box buster ever.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so remember the guy comes home. He's going to get his title back from the guy? Yeah. This is what I would expect from Kai Green. Like, come home and fight this guy and get what's rightfully yours. And the whole... Everything will be forgiven.
I got to imagine Kai's got more longevity too, because he didn't start really pushing the gear until he competed naturally for a long time.
Ronnie Coleman was the same way.
And then all of a sudden he obviously got on the gear, knew his body, and responded like crazy. So you got to imagine the guy's got some longevity over some of these other guys.
It's like this. I said this about being a promoter, like a Don King. If I'm Robin Chang, I'm flying, or AMI, I'm flying Kai Green out, and we're going to have a conversation.
This will be exciting, man.
Let's find out what it is that we can mutually do to make this for the fans and for the history. Like, there's no guarantee you're going to win, but the storyline would be good. Let's announce that.
Hype it up like a fight.
Let's get you started early, and let's find out how we can, mutually benefit from this. We'll give your supplement company a booth. Those booths at the Olympia aren't cheap, by the way.
Right. Yeah. It's like, you watch like how the UFC, which I think they do such a brilliant job of hyping up the fights and generating so much interest. Bodybuilding could totally do that. You get Kai on, you start creating this like stir before the competition.
But let me tell you what we do. We shoot ourselves in the foot. These guys don't want to take pictures before the contest. They don't want to make an announcement because then they're locked in. It's a commitment. And you know what? That's what kills us. Like, we need to know this shit now. Like, if I'm Kai Green, I got one more year.
Start the shit talking now and all that stuff.
If I'm Kai and I got one more year, I'm like, okay, well, I may not like the champ. Me and Shawn Ray might get along fine. I don't have to badmouth Shawn Ray, but what I need to do is promote me.
Right.
I've been gone for 3 years. Let me get out in front of this thing and be the dictator of my comeback to get what I left and let languish for 3 years. And I don't care if Phil Heath shows up. I got one last run at this thing, and right now, this is the climate that needs to do it. Somebody has to get a hold of Kai Green and go, look, dude, stop playing with us. Because Kai threw out a picture after the Mr. Olympia. It says, do you guys miss me?
He did.
Of course we miss him. We got Shawn Ray, who's great, but there's a lot of chinks in his arm. And you turn Shawn around to the back, and Kai's going to win it all back.
He'll eat him up.
So I don't know what we're waiting for. Like, we're talking to everybody but Kai. Like, Kai's a guy that needs to get in front of this thing, but it's a strange industry. When you start getting those followers and those minions, it's hard to even get an audience with somebody like him. You got to go through these different layers to try to, like, let's have a conversation. Oh, he's making cartoons. He's at Comic-Con. He's over doing the film in China. And you can get domesticated and civilized and comfortable, and getting ready for the Olympia is not something you can half-heartedly do. You can't just come out of retirement and go, okay, I'm going to do the Mr. Olympia. You saw what happened to Kevin Lavrone. You saw what happened to Flex Wheeler. This is not a sport where comebacks are notoriously well accepted.
Mm-hmm.
Even though Arnold in his prime from 75 to 80 took 5 years off, came back and won. Even though he won, everybody talks shit about him.
It was a very controversial win.
Well, in what way? Because I've had this debate before. Because remember who was second?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Okay, that's my point
Yeah,
right
that's a
there.
good
It's a controversial win, but nobody knows who the fuck second place was.
Yeah, that's a good shot.
It's a forgettable contest.
Who was second that year?
It was Chris Dickerson.
Dickerson.
He's smaller than me.
You know what's funny is that
Are you going to tell me that Chris can stand next to Arnold on a bad day?
No. And
So Mike Mincer was the one that
that's
was
the
trying
controversy, right? Because Menser and him got in that big old fight backstage.
Mike wanted it to be a controversy.
Yeah.
Mike was 5th place. There's 4 people between him and Arnold. He's making the biggest noise to try to
You're like,
get
you're not
me
even in
seat.
the argument,
You're not
dude.
even in the argument, but everybody goes, oh, Mike Mincer should have won. Mike couldn't beat Frank Zane.
Yeah.
So nobody remembers who second was, but everybody remembers that that's a controversial win for Arnold.
What a great point.
And Arnold, while we were comparing him to 1975.
Sure, that's what I think a lot of the controversy.
Absolutely. He's a shell of a man. He's an actor. He's domesticated. He's jumping in at the last minute. He doesn't look the same. But Chris Dickerson standing next to him is like me standing next to Ronnie in his prime.
Yeah.
I mean, they just went for, like, Chris is shorter than me. Chris is 5'5". And on a good day by himself, he does look like Mr. Olympia. But at this time in 1980, 2 years before he won, he looked like, Arnold's son. He just looked too small. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the disparity in the height was just so. Now Arnold kind of wide waisted, the legs were slender, but when he hits his famous Arnold shots and his arms next to Chris's,
Yeah.
I mean, Chris's arms were maybe 16 inches, and Arnold's got these 22-inch arms, and he commanded the attention. Chris didn't have the same charisma. He developed it when he became Mr. Olympia, but Mike Mincer put his name in the mix, and it wasn't in the mix.
Do you think we're ever going to see another? Maybe not. There's not only ever going to be one Arnold, but do you ever think that maybe we're going to ever see another bodybuilder who's going to take and have that presence to really go mainstream? Because what Arnold did for bodybuilding, no bodybuilder's ever done since. And again, he's unique. But do you ever think that might happen?
Haven't we gone through that with like every sport? I remember in the 90s or the 80s when we had Showtime, we had Magic Johnson and Isaiah Thomas and Larry Bird, and you had all these guys that were great in that era, and then it was like, where's the next superstar is going to come from? And then there's this down thing, and suddenly here came Kobe Bryant and Allen Iverson. I mean, they come in spurts, right? And even in boxing, it's like Muhammad Ali's done. Who's next? Larry Holmes is not. He was like the champion for like 11 years, and they're all forgettable, right? And then we had Mike Tyson. Right, Mike Tyson came along, and we remembered why we love boxing. And then Mike's gone, and I never really bought into Lennox Lewis. I mean, Evander Holyfield, but after
Klitschko brothers, I'm done.
no, I mean the whole Klitschko was champ for like 10 years.
Yeah,
I'm like, when did that happen?
Uncontested. Yeah.
Where did I go? What happened to professional boxing? But it's like. Even right now, do we know who the champion is? Anthony something?
I don't know.
Yeah, and who cares, right? Bodybuilding is going to go through that.
I agree.
Like we had Arnold, and he has that dominating personality, and even the Mr. Olympias following Arnold, and nobody had that charisma.
No,
that it factor.
Phil is flat as fuck.
Yeah, but you know what? Let me just tell you something. Arnold had the creator in Joe Weider, right? And Arnold had the politics in marrying a Kennedy, and he also had the acting.
That's because he had swag though from out the gates.
He did, but you
Out
got to
the
remember,
gates he had
some
swag.
athletes come into this sport just to be a great athlete.
Right.
How many boxers, when they put the mic to them, don't even know what the fuck to say after they win the world championship?
Well, that's what we need. We need a Conor McGregor of bodybuilding, and that will happen, don't you think?
Well, I don't know. I mean, bodybuilding, you're still talking testosterone. We got a guy that starts talking shit like that. It might be a problem. He might like Flex wanted to kick my ass. I'm so glad he didn't. But you get to the point where you start putting yourself above others. It's people that are judging you can knock you down. It's a subjective sport. Conor can get out and fight.
Right.
Yeah.
And you saw what happens to a big mouth. He gets fucking knocked out.
Right.
So in bodybuilding, you can only have so much swagger, but most of us are trying to just develop our physique, not trying to develop a personality. I think the personality is now coming with the digital age, with these social media guys.
Right,
But
right.
You don't hear or see the bodybuilders trying to come out of the box like, I'm the shit. It's hard to say I'm the shit and I'm the man unless you have that standout trophy. And when Phil did it, it backfired. Like he lost the contest, and now he's making all these excuses for losing, and no one wants to hear about it.
Right.
I think Phil probably would have done himself a favor if he had just said, you know what? I came in with one arm tied behind my back. I have this stomach issue. I have to have a second surgery. I looked at the pictures. I saw the video. I saw where I could have. Yeah, I see where anybody could have beat me. Yeah. I'm off. So even when I'm off, I got second. So, congratulations. But he's not doing that. He's really antagonizing Shawn by making him sound like he's not worthy, and there's a conspiracy that they knew Friday night. Of course you knew Friday night. Prejudging is to determine who's leading, and after Friday you were trailing.
Right.
There's no conspiracy. You have this stomach issue, and now you acknowledge it because you have to go under the knife again. He hasn't done that. So he's really at the top of the food chain. That's where you can talk shit. And Shawn Rhoden hasn't said a word. He won Mr. Olympia, and we're probably not going to hear anything. But that's not what we're looking for. What we're looking for is somebody that can promote the winner. Like, I don't think Muscle and Fitness and AMI have the right guy that they can put on, Good Morning America or Jay Leno. Not Jay Leno. What's the guy's name? Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah.
I'm showing my age. Jimmy Kimmel. But those guys have a media platform. They should be taking this guy and putting him everywhere. Yeah. They got National Enquirer. You got Mr. Olympia. Put him in the places of opportunity.
But they got to have that personality.
That's
what I mean? They got to have that personality. Kai has got some interesting things about him that I could see, like the way he poses and moves. And
Yeah, but he's all shy and quiet.
yeah, that's it. That's true.
It's still like pulling teeth.
Yeah, it's true.
Some guys would benefit from having a PR person.
Definitely.
They're really keen on hiring managers to help. The manager will help get them work to get them money, but not many of them will hire a PR person to get them publicity.
What was
And that's
The
really
Rock's
what's needed.
interest?
The Rock is always, and like a lot of celebrities that play sports, he played football, they train at Gold's Gym. I mean, they get their inspiration from the bodybuilders. You'd be surprised. I used to walk into Gold's Gym and Apollo Creed would come over. I'm like, Apollo Creed! He's, let me see your arm, show me your calf. And Gregory Hines, remember the tap dancer?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people. Hulk Hogan, Lyle Alzado. The irony about Lyle Alzado is I loved the Raiders back in the day, and I used to date one of the Raider cheerleaders. And so having Lyle talk to me was like royalty. And the next thing you know, when I'm winning the national championships, he's introducing me, from Walnut, California, Sugar, Shawn Ray, whatever. And I had that little connection with this guy that I idolized because I was a football player. And it all came back to the gym. He was looking at me in the magazine. So when I walk into Gold's Gym, and you got Magic in there and Michael Thompson and all these Keanu Reeves, these guys revered the bodybuilders because the magazines made us celebrities and they were following our routines. That's a real ego booster when you're a bodybuilder and you think these guys don't recognize you and they come over. Can I get a picture with you? It's like, hey, aren't you? It's kind of a trip. But The Rock, he's always come from a workout background. And he had a production company kind of highlight the Mr. Olympia. His ex-wife, who's now his manager, Danny, she's actually a pro figure competitor. So she's heavy in the game and won her pro card. And he was there. I was there when she won her pro card. He was sitting behind me. I was too kind of I was shy. I didn't want to turn around and go, Dwayne, can I get a picture? But ironically, when I saw him in the hallway, he's like, he knew me and he knew Flex. He's been following the sport.
Awesome.
When you have that commonality about the weights, it strips away all the celebrity.
No, absolutely. We talk about this all the time on the show that there's something that's unique about people that are really, really into training weight. Is the thing that we all have in common is we're growth minded. We're trying to improve ourselves, and that's a common stream that I think you can find. And I think that's really, and you can always, once you strip down all the other bullshit, we can all see kind of eye to eye on that. And I think that's really cool.
Like the Weeders, Joe and Ben, they did a book called Brothers in Iron, and that's kind of really what takes away the economic disparity and the political and the religious differences. This is a sport where none of that shit factors in. If I go in a gym in any place in the world, I mean, because of what I've done on a bodybuilding thing, I'm pretty much acknowledged or I'm accepted. And it's probably one of the few places that can actually happen, where you can actually move around the world as an athlete and not have to run into any kind of political bullshit. Bodybuilding and weight training, there's that one common, you don't have to speak English to work out with me, which is cool. We have that one common thing, and that's what brings people together in terms of like Brothers in Iron.
So did the Rock's production thing take off? Because he was trying to do that
I was wondering.
a couple of years ago.
It didn't. I mean, he highlighted it. That's all I saw was a highlight reel. It was about I don't know, I think maybe 10 minutes long, and then they replicated that again this year on $7 Production. He didn't come this year.
That's it, $7 Production, that's the name.
And you know how he got that name, right?
No.
He had like $7 in his pocket, and he was about to turn it in Hollywood, and he that's when it hit for him. And at the time he arrived in Hollywood, he had $7 in his pocket.
Oh, that's a cool story.
That is
So
good.
he's like, I'll never forget, I was ready to quit, I was ready to walk away, and like right when this whole opportunity came, I had $7. I think that's really cool that he would actually remember that, because now he's got like 150 million, whatever the hell it is. But he's doing, you don't get there unless you're like accessible, social, and personable. I mean, I don't know how many followers he has on Twitter or Instagram. It's like 100 and something million.
That's insane.
Yeah, he's one of the highest.
It's ridiculous.
And he's on every freaking magazine, and he's on every talk show. He's everywhere. He's got a. He's got.
I don't know anybody that doesn't like him.
Yeah, did he have like a fitness show coming on, like a warrior type thing?
I didn't know that. No.
Yeah, it's coming on.
Yeah,
it's kind of like a American Ninja type.
Yeah. You didn't see that?
No, I didn't
That's
see
right, but
that.
you don't watch sports. Yeah, it was just highlighted on one of the NFL games.
So we're at the Olympia, and he's giving a video message. Hey guys, sorry I can't be there. I'm filming right now, but I love you guys. I wish you all the best, and history's going to be made. He supports what we do, and we've always had someone of high caliber outside of bodybuilding that's always kind of endorsed what we do. I mean, Sylvester Stallone got the Arnold Classic Lifetime Achievement Award, and that whole 50 Cent was there last year. It's not 50 cents, it's 50 Cent.
50 Cent.
He was at the. I got to get it right because they can start typing on it. So 50 cents, fucker. But yeah, all these guys. I saw JJ Watts at the Arnold Classic, and so a friend of mine, Dan Solomon, we do the podcast for the Olympia every year. He's just been promoted to be one of the helping create the promotion of the Olympia. He's going to bring that back. I mean, there's a lot of celebrities that come to the Olympia and they don't even announce them. Like they're there and they don't say anything. Back when Joe was alive, they made it a point to kind of tie Hollywood to this industry. And now Dan Solomon in his position is going to try to bring some of that back.
That's awesome.
Nice.
That'll be
it's there's definitely something unique about lifting weights that connects other people who do the same thing. It's a pretty awesome feeling. So.
97 Olympia, we had Dana Carvey, MC. In 1998, we had Sinbad. When I went to the 94 Olympia, 94 Olympia, I used to date a model. She was just a model, a Victoria's Secret model, but she went on to become a little bit famous. You guys
Man, you might have some more kids out there.
You know,
be careful, man.
You know who Brooke Burke is? I don't want to drop names.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
I was dating her, and I took her to the 94 Olympia, but then when I got there, I saw Anna Nicole Smith. I'm like, I had nothing to do with Anna Nicole Smith, but she was hot. She was the guest girl doing a trophy presentation. But at the time, Brooke was nobody. She was just being a Victoria's Secret model. But it's funny where we come from because she was at a photo shoot doing her little thing, and then I was doing a cover shot, and then we wound up dating after that. And then she went on to huge fame after I dumped her because I was too busy being a bodybuilder.
Oh, shit.
Well, she didn't want a guy that wanted to lift weights all day. That's not fun. But I was in love with the bodybuilding, so you're going to lose. You cannot keep that going with a girl that's like, hey, I want to go shopping. I want to spend time. I want to... all your weights are more important, and you're always looking at yourself. You can't compete with somebody like that.
Were you able to make that transition really smooth? Like, were you, because somebody who's competed, I know how selfish the sport is. You have to be
Oh yeah,
successful.
there's no question.
Were you able to make that a seamless transition to being this super selfish guy to all of a sudden now family man and wife and?
Well, I mean, yeah, because it was part of the retirement side was me longing for what I didn't have. Right. I looked around, and for me, success was what am I missing, not what do I have. I mean, the cars, the bikes, the homes, the travel, the money, I was there. So what am I missing? I'm missing like my best man at my wedding, who I've known since preschool. He's got his kids that he's, taking to sports events, and I don't have any. I got a dog, right? So I wanted what I didn't have. And so it was a selection process of, gosh, now what? I mean, you travel the world, you meet different kind of girls from different countries, and God, if you have a kid with this girl in another country, it can get ugly, like Canada or Brazil. And when you break up, I had to process a lot of stuff because my entire career I was told the only thing that's going to ruin your career is a girl, and it's like kryptonite because at the end of the day, if you have a bad relationship, it's going to carry over to the gym.
Right.
It's going to affect your appetite. It's going to affect your relationship with training and your focus. And trust me, literally all the bodybuilders I knew that tried to get married were getting divorced, and they didn't last long on the landscape of being good because all this other shit's taking place. So it was something that I didn't desire while I was bodybuilding. I desired the Sandow Trophy. And the only thing that got me out of bed every year after I lost was trying to win the Mr. Olympia. I didn't have this obsession with it, but it gave me a certain amount of freedom. Like I'd never wanted to work. And I knew that as long as I'm doing this, it's not work. I didn't consider it work. And I imagine football players probably feel the same way until they start feeling the aches and pains of the business, the elbows, the joints, the hips, and next thing you know, they don't want to play anymore. But those football players wind up typically retiring because of injury. Yeah. Bodybuilders, typically, some of them wind up because of injury or because of relationships or because of financial hardships or those types of things. I walked away because I was trying to get to that next phase of life of having a family, and I knew that I couldn't have one while I'm bodybuilding.
Good deal, man. I'm glad I had you on the show.
That's all good, man.
Very, very glad to have you on the show. It's great talking to you, Shawn.
They called me the mouth back when I was competing.
You fit right in.
Lived up to it.
Yeah, awesome.
I enjoy what I do, and it's a labor of love. I mean, look, the best part about it is being done as a competitor. there's more satisfaction in promoting, because I get to see it come full circle with guys that are going to be coming up to me in 5 years. Hey, I competed in your show and you handed me my award, or you announced me when I was on stage. I mean, that for me, I still get a kick out of it. And hearing about my career that I forgot about so many years ago is also a kick, because when you're on that one track focus, I only let in the things that were going to help me. Like, I wasn't trying to make memories. Right. So when I travel the world and I hear these things and I see pictures and stuff, for me, it's like, yeah, I was there. I didn't have to win it. I was there, right? I mean,
that's cool.
So
awesome, bro. Well, thanks for coming on, man.
Right on.
Appreciate it.